even the Empire is like insignificant, insignificant next to the power of the Joker. So.
Well, that's why I'm so excited about this new one, is because it was built off the same ethos of like no one is wrong for being born the way that they are.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I actually just picked it up.
Yeah, that is absolutely the premise of The Missing, and it's carrying that tone into Hotel Barcelona, and I'm curious what a roguelike hack and slash will do with that.
You mentioned this briefly, but I want to bring it up again. The moment that sold Hotel Barcelona to me was hearing the like knockoff Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It, playing in the trailer. I was like, this is it's bringing me back to the Deadly Premonition racing minigame where
the Green Days.
You hear a knockoff like American Idiot, and it's just perfect in how blatant, but also I don't know, bold, I guess. I can't. It's Deadly Premonition, and I say this in the nicest way possible, because as a creator, I respect Swery more than I do Tommy Wiseau. But there is that, like, it has that room sensibility where you're like, you cannot tell if what you're watching is actually brilliant. And that in itself is why it's brilliant, because it's constantly challenging you to go like, was that a joke? Was this on purpose? Was this unintentional? Was this an accident? Like it just has you, it's curveballing you like constantly. And I'm playing it again and I'm enjoying it more because I can engage with it that way. Whereas the first time we played it, I was just really frustrated with it as a game experience, because it is like not good to play.
Yeah, it is earnest to a fault.
Yeah, and I guess that's the best thing we can say about Swery games, is that they're earnest to, and that's, I got that vibe off him when I saw him in person too. Like, he does seem like a genuine guy, and that's commendable. And Suda's cool too, I guess.
Yeah, right. No, I think that the best feeling we got about that whole panel was seeing like the mountain of people line up to talk to Suda51.
Yeah,
and there were like 14 people in our line to talk to Swery, and we're like,
I think it was less than 4. It was like less than a dozen. 8. But we were like, no, this is great, because this is why we're here.
Yeah.
Much respect, for our king.
And I like No More Heroes and a lot of killers. Like I really do like Suda, but Swery, man.
Yeah, I'm less familiar with Suda. My favorite game of his is Shadows of the Damned, because that's the only one I played and finished. And then low key, one of my other favorite games is Liberation Maiden on the 3DS. If no one's ever played that, it's a neat little shooter.
Yeah, you were violently searching like 3DS Suda51 robot girl.
Yeah, because that print they gave us, they gave out at the event, in the corner of it had a girl with a pink visor, and I'm like, I know who that is. That's from his 3DS only game, like the download only game he did for the 3DS, where you play as the president of the United States and it's a hot anime girl. How do I remember this? Because I used to own that game.
Welcome to Brainlords, Video Games of the Mind, a panel discussion between artists and the art they love. I'm your host, Kyle. I go by Q Monster Props, and I'm an SFX artist for the video game industry. You might recognize my work from doing grand prizes for Games Done Quick, or my day job at Vulpin Props, where I build esports trophies. Jorge, tell us about yourself.
Yo, quick shout out! I saw that stuff you guys did for PAX Vulpin Props.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, what did you guys do? The Chocobo?
Yes. So my most recent work, the whole studio was working on that one, was a life-sized chibi, chibis or chibis, depending on where you're from, style chocobo, that was cosplaying as a planeswalker for Magic the Gathering, for the collab between Magic and
yeah. In a rare moment of Magic knowledge, I knew who they were cosplaying. But yeah, I took a photo with it. It was great. I loved it. Good job on that. So if you've been to PAX, and you've seen the Magic the Gathering booth, the Final Fantasy crossover side. That was Vulpin props. They worked on that.
Yeah, the Buster Sword that everyone was posing with.
Yeah, that everyone took bad photos of because
There's
Anyway.
like one pose. You were like one of two people that did a different style of pose. Anyways, Jorge, who are you?
Yeah, I'm Jorge. Hello. I'm a graphic designer, illustrator. I've worked in the field of gaming and gaming industry for almost 10 years now, maybe 15. Currently, I'm a designer at Fangamer. I do a lot of work for shirt designs and publishing and merchandising. I'm very proud of the work we do. It's one of the best jobs I've ever had. And also, I've done some freelance work. You might have seen my work if you've played Gravity Circuit. We did the cover for that. Was commissioned from the devs for me to work on. It was great. It was one of my favorite projects ever. I hope you see it. And here we are again. It feels like a while, but we're back.
Jorge, I have a quick question for you. By the time this airs, Deltarune Parts 3 and 4 will be with us.
Wow, it'll be a post Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 world. Yeah.
Yeah, PDR. My question for you is this: the vibe at Fangamer, is this like y'all's Black Friday? Like, is everyone ready for the coming just fervor? I can imagine that there would be, say, licensed merchandise for Deltarune Parts 3
I'm gonna
and
tell
4.
you something. You're asking too many questions.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna play dumb right now. It'll be great. It'll be great. We're all gonna love it. We're all looking forward to it. It's amazing. I hope you play it. Go play it. Thank you.
All right. Well, go play it and then shut down Fangamer servers from hammering buy now on all the cool whatevers they have.
Oh, guess what? Yeah, that will be awesome. Why don't you do that? Yes.
Anyways, our topic for today is: what if each Final Fantasy was the final Final Fantasy?
You like how we did that? That had nothing to do with what we talked about. We're in there. This is a Final Fantasy episode, ladies and gentlemen. We tricked you.
Final Fantasy's on my brain.
Oh my god, it sure is. We've both been replaying some of these, not just in preparation for this, but just because we love these games.
Yeah.
And we've been looking forward to making an episode of this for a while. And I want to say that the recent announcement for the MTG Final Fantasy crossover kind of got us in gear for this.
Yeah, say what you will about the Fortnite-ification of any cross-media franchise, but I have been researching more on Final Fantasy, and it's, even though I've grown up with plenty of the games, it's really helped me truly come into an appreciation for just what these games have done for video game storytelling as a whole. Not to play my hand too early here, but wowee is all I can say. These are important games, and it can not feel like you can get wrapped up in the franchising of it, the merchandising of it, when you kind of take the games as a whole, as spin-offs of Final Fantasy VII, of new versions of old stuff shown in FF14, but no, when you take them at face value from their history, they're wickedly important video games. And I think it's easy to overlook that because there's just so dang many of them.
Yeah, I think an interesting thing that has happened with the Final Fantasy series is that with each new numbered entry, we get a bunch of new fans coming in, and that's great. But it's really hard to overstate or even just plainly state how important the games that came before were and still are to modern RPGs. It's actually quite interesting how many fans of Final Fantasy I know that have never played anything before 7, before 10. Some that I know only play 14.
That is real quick. That I won't talk too much about MTGX at Final Fantasy, but sure. I looked at the number of cards that were in the whole set, and it kind of feels like it's the FF14 featuring the rest of the Final Fantasy set. There's
it's huge.
150 something or so Final Fantasy 14 cards, and I think it's slightly more than there are Final Fantasy 7 cards.
Absolutely, actually, yeah, I counted. The same thing happened with Theatrism, the rhythm game that came
Oh,
out. There are because the new one came out post 14 is the first one that had 14 tracks in it. It is the game probably next to 7 with the most single tracks in it. 7 gets a bit of an advantage because I'm counting all the spin-offs of 7 that are included, but as a single game, 14 has the most tracks in the game. And for obvious reasons, it is like Square Enix's cash cow right now. It's
yeah.
like the money printer. People love it. People who don't even care about Final Fantasy love 14.
I get it. It
With,
would be
yeah.
fiscally irresponsible to not pretend Final Fantasy 14 is a thing. I think maybe I just get a little butthurt because I've seen how it consumes people's lives, and I just go,
Oh, yeah.
like, y'all, there's like 15 other games out there at least.
Yeah, and no, I'm kind of with you on this. This is the reason I've never been able to like fully immerse myself in 14 is because it is a different kind of game. Like
It's a different
especially
game.
especially if you've been if you're here because of Final Fantasy, you do have to come in with like completely different expectations than you would for like a mainline title. It's an MMO. It's what they call a amusement park kind of game. Like there is a story to it, and I've heard it's good.
I've heard
I'm
it's
sure,
the best story.
I'm sure it's great whenever I do get to it,
Yeah.
because like the problem is you have to get over the hurdle of the first campaign that came out like way back then, in order which establishes the entire world before it starts telling like a deep story. So that has been kind of a difficult, I guess, speed bump for me. And all this to like we're not even going to talk about this in this episode.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah, so well, let's get back to the topic at hand.
Yeah.
So we're discussing each Final Fantasy as though it were the last Final Fantasy ever to be released. So we'll go through the list chronologically. On this episode, we're only going to do Final Fantasies numbered 1 through 6, so the Pixel era.
Correct.
And we're going to go through each one and say what would happen if what would be the legacy of Final Fantasy if the last game were Final Fantasy 1. Then we're going to go to 2, then 3, etc. What we're not going to do is what ifs about the future of Square. We're not going to talk about like, oh, well, Dragon Quest would have stepped in and would have become, there's some fun fan fiction type stuff out there. But more we're talking about like if you only look at Final Fantasy through the lens of each game, what is its standing legacy for the history of video games?
Okay. What's interesting about this is that there's a lot I didn't know before going into this episode.
I did so much research, and I feel like I'm still so unprepared.
Well, I also want to, before we start, I also want to point out, we're not trying to, like, we will have our personal feelings towards specific titles. I think they're all good. We're not going to pick favorites. We're not here to, like, debate which one's better or worse. This is more about like kind of acknowledging like what the contributions to RPGs and gaming are with each title. I assume that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely have like we'll definitely have our own personal asides and interjections.
That'll
and
get
things
in the
like
way.
that.
Trust me. Yeah.
That way you can see how our opinions align with with yours, and if it's different, you can maybe atone for your sins. Talk to a mentor or therapist about it. That's not what we're here for today. So let's just jump into it. Actually, real quick, Jorge. Without taking up too much time, what's your history with Final Fantasy games?
Oh, you want me to make this a short answer?
I mean, just what was your first? And
I'm looking at my first one right here. It's Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo, which was originally Final Fantasy IV in Japan. I played this when I was, oh my god, I even remember I was 8 years old. I was in elementary. A friend of mine was like, so I was very lucky. I had a friend whose mom would love playing RPGs, like console RPG games. And, she would rent them at Blockbuster. My friend would come over, or my friend and I would meet on Monday in school day the next week. And he would be like, yo, I just saw this game called Breath of Fire. It's so cool. Oh, I just saw this game called Illusion of Gaia. It's amazing. Oh, you gotta, and then he told me like, yo, I gotta tell you about this one. It's called Final Fantasy II. and it's crazy. And he just told me like the first everything up until the summon village. He told me, and I'm like, what is this shit? I gotta check this out. And so
And
yeah,
also, like if you haven't played like a lot of story-rich games, to have someone go up to you and be like, "Yeah, you're like on this airship and you kill all these guys and you feel bad about it," like that's a lot compared to games of that era.
Yeah, he didn't even bring that up. I remember him bringing up like there's this guy called Kane and he's cool. Oh my god, you got to see he jumps.
That's true.
Yeah,
if you say anything about that game, I feel like that's the most accurate thing.
Yeah, well, we were 8-year-olds. We're like, yo, like you're a Dark Knight and your friend is like a Dragon Knight, and that's it. I'm sold. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. But the thing is like before that, I've only ever played like Dragon Warrior, like RPG games. So in my head, I'm picturing a completely different thing. I started up and it's Final Fantasy II, and I'm like, oh, this is engaging. I was trying to learn how to read at the time because I like English is my second language. So at the same time I'm like kind of trying to figure out what's going on, but I just know I was captivated. Like the music was great. The fact that the story starts out and it's so like. Yeah, like it starts out with like the Dark Knight Cecil is ordered by Baron to like blow up or just commit atrocities in the wizard village to gain the crystal. And again, I'm 8 years old. I'm like, my brain doesn't understand politics, but also I'm like, oh my god, this feels like big kid stuff. I don't know, this is exciting. After that, I completely changed. Like I remember being hyped for Final Fantasy III, like renting it when it came out, also having a blast. I remember 7 came out and I was like, what the hell happened? They skipped a few. I remember, I was in my mind, I was like, wait, there's only 3. What happened here? Like genuinely confused about this. Mm-hmm. And I remember I even went back and got Final Fantasy I because I found it, I will never forget this. I found it at a KB Toys for $10. They were liquidating NES. $10 USD. I asked my great aunt for money and she gave me $5 and she gave my brother $5. And I went to my brother, I'm like, yo, do you want to play Final Fantasy, the original one? Give me that $5. And convinced him to give me his $5 so I could go to KB Toys and get the $10 NES Final Fantasy 1. And I loved it too. Like they were all great for me. I was just into this series had like a chokehold on me for so long.
So you went through like the Sony era. You played the 7s and the 8s and
yeah.
et cetera.
I remember 7 was peak. Like that's what I hit the fever pitch of my.
So say you can't not be a young adult and think that Final Fantasy 7 is like the greatest thing ever.
I mean, and the other thing is too, I couldn't play it when it came out because I didn't like my parents couldn't afford a PlayStation. So I was like, shit, what am I gonna do? I found out there was a PC version that came out I think a year or 2 later, and that's the version I played for a while. Like I got the PC version. I played the game at my dad's work computer. So he would take me to work and he would do, cause he did signs. So when he was in the workshop, I would play on the computer Final Fantasy VII. Like that was like that was the best day. I was just like there for hours. Cause he was working, he was doing his shift. So uninterrupted Final Fantasy VII on the PC blew my mind. And then, after that, I did manage to get a PlayStation. Then I played 8, 9, 10 when I got a PS2, which also happened later because I couldn't get one either. It just goes on. Yeah, Anthology, Chronicles, when those came out. I was obsessed.
What draws you to Final Fantasy games? I know, sorry not to prolong this too much, but...
Oh, yeah, no, I'll answer. I think back then, for sure, what drew me to it was and I know exactly that it was this because it just enthralled me so much, this mix of like science fiction and fantasy, which to me was like novel. I'm single digit age, and this is altering my brain that I'm a knight with a sword, but there's a robot and I have to beat it. Like
I mean certainly while it was inspired by Tolkien D&D fantasy, like it quickly established its own identity. So
I feel like the Mobius influence played into it a little bit, and the Laputa. I think we mentioned that while we were talking. The Castle in the Sky having robots. That's kind of the genesis of it, because like Final Fantasy I, the Flying Fortress is where you fight the machines. Like the war mech is there, like all the, and that just stayed. That just became a mainstay. Like Final Fantasy IV 2 in the US, the Tower of Zot is like a fucking like high tech tower with like robots in it, and you're a paladin, and I don't know, to me, like, again, 8-year-old 9-year-old brain, to me that was like incredible. I cannot believe I'm playing this game. This is amazing, and that's what drew me in. But then, what made me stay was like seeing these characters be like real, and like, just like being engaged with their plight and their pain and their drama, and recognizing like, oh, there's a story being told here. Like, I want to pay attention to. I was very invested in like Rydia, for example, and 2, because I'm like, she's so sad, but then like she overcomes her fear, and to me that was inspiring. I was like, oh wow, like she did it. She learned fire. It's amazing. Like that kind of stuff just stayed with me all through my childhood. Just how much, and it hurt because like I didn't own these games. Again, we couldn't really afford a lot of games back then, so I could only play Final Fantasy 2 if I could rent it that weekend, and if it was at Blockbuster. Like, if I went to the Blockbuster and it wasn't there, that was a ruined weekend. I would try to rent it so much, just because I wanted to, like, I looking back, I should have just tried to buy it, like save my money and buy it, because I remember having anxiety not being able to play these games. That's how obsessed I was at the time.
Well, as for me, I mean, I remember renting Final Fantasy III US from Blockbuster, and it was a game that, like, I got it, but I had a little bit of trouble getting through, like, the MOG area where you're, like, splitting the party. Like, a lot of those concepts were a little bit more beyond what I was, like, comfortable doing in a video game.
Before that, had you played RPGs?
Yeah. I discovered I liked RPGs through Mario RPG.
Oh, okay.
And so I was starting to, like, it, the game worked as intended, and I was starting to really branch out, and so I was able to identify, like, okay, Final Fantasy, I think it has that stuff, or maybe I was able to see that it had the same logo with Square. Regardless, I remember renting it and thinking it was really cool, but I just had a hard time like rocking like what I was supposed to do. But then I had like a summer or two around like 14 where I just got like every ROM you can think of for the Super Nintendo, SNES 9X, and I remember just going through and I replayed, like, it was my summer of RPGs, and so I replayed Earthbound and Mario RPG, and then I just started like going, you know what, I'm gonna try like these classic games. I keep hearing about. So I did Chrono Trigger and FF6 and a bunch of other games. I don't know why I didn't try FF4. And I know that I had at least like I have a memory of like at least a friend showing me like a pivotal scene in FF4. Sorry, I'm like confusing like calling it 2 or 4 in my head, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
But yeah, I remember like going to a friend's house showing me like, oh, like a character can like die in this game. And that being like, whoa, that's crazy. I didn't think you could do that. That's one of your guys. And you keep playing the game? The game just isn't over?
Right. What a time. You're bringing me back. Discovering ROMs was just the best time ever.
I didn't have access to PlayStation 1, so I wasn't able to get on the... Like, I was part of the cultural zeitgeist that was anime coming to the US and 7 Mania, but I always felt like my friends, especially like my female friends at the time, were like gushing about it so much that I was like, well, it can't be that great.
Oh no.
Just being a shitty 15-year-old, but it's whatever. But, undeniably, like, Sephiroth, regardless of my attitude, like, Cloud is cool, Sephiroth is cool, Aerith is cool, Tifa is cool, they're all cool. So, and then from there on, like, played them when I got them. I played a lot of 10. I went back and I played 9, and even though it was like not as new of a game, I was like, no, but I think I like this one a lot better. So they've been with me through my saga of being an RPG enjoyer, and likewise, I think it's just the melodrama that is relatable to anyone, the robots and the magic, like, it's just cool. It is fantasy in a way that you don't always get to see. So
yeah, it had a flavor to it, I guess, that I couldn't get. It was hard to get anywhere else at the time.
Yeah. So, Jorge, let's jump straight into our topics. Why don't we begin with the beginning, Final Fantasy I, and tell me, if Final Fantasy was the final Final Fantasy, what would we be saying about Final Fantasy?
We would probably be like, damn, that was good. Why didn't they keep doing that? Because Final Fantasy 1 apparently did exceptionally well in the US. This is another thing I didn't know. It was a million seller. Nintendo did a really good job of marketing it. It came with elaborate maps and guides inside the game, like packed within the game itself. Nintendo also promoted like a strategy guide that you could get if you were signed up to Nintendo Power. They this was kind of a little weird. I get why they did it, but it is weird. They did redraw a lot of the artwork to appeal more to like the hardcore fantasy, like
Frazetta style.
Not even that, no. Like, because I actually feel like Amino was very Frazetta inspired.
Yeah.
This was more like in line with like fantasy book covers and like old school pulp.
Guys' Vans.
Like that kind of stuff where it was more down to earth, like fantasy. And again, that there's nothing wrong with that. I do wish it, like, again, if Final Fantasy was the last one, we would have been like, what the hell? The artwork for this game is amazing. Why didn't they use this in the US? Like, that's like, who is this Amino guy? Holy shit. This is amazing. Yeah, like that's pretty much what I would say. Not much else. We'd probably get the remakes for it though, right? Do you think that would happen? Like,
I would assume I'm under the assumption that like we would still be playing like the pixel remasters.
Okay.
But like I guess a quick aside. So, FF1 that came out in I didn't know this. So it came out in 1987. I didn't realize that Dragon Quest II came out January of that year, and Final Fantasy came out in December of that year. So I had always thought it was Dragon Quest and then Final Fantasy, and then they just go on their respective numbers. But like, no, Dragon Quest was established by then.
Yeah, and Dragon Quest was what did push Square to pursue like RPGs, because they're like, oh hey, people like this. We should. Well, actually, it was Sakaguchi that was like, hey, people like this, we should do it, and Square was like, and then they
we should do
get it done. Yeah.
An Aliens game,
and they did. But little did they know that like they almost scrubbed their flagship series.
Yeah, and so I guess for real quick context, the Final Fantasy 1 is a game that is largely D&D inspired. You pick 4 heroes of light, and you are saving a number of crystals from who's the villain in that one?
Chaos is the villain.
Chaos is the villain.
Initially it's the 4 fiends.
That's it.
Which have are consuming the power of the crystals and making them do bad things.
Mm-hmm. I think were this to be the last Final Fantasy game, I feel like people would remember it as like, remember that D&D game with the serial numbers filed off? Because this is where the Final Fantasy has the least of its identity. It really feels more like a response to wizardry.
Oh yeah, I mean the inspirations for FF, wizardry, D&D, Ultima, a little bit of Dragon Quest. It was a lot more. Yeah, it didn't really have an identity, even though I would argue that it was building it from the very beginning. With how much of the art of Amino's artwork they translated into pixel art was like that was like what was unique about it. And at the time, I remember the dev team's efforts to make the game stand out from Dragon Quest was to make it more adult, more like grown up, more scary, I guess. And part of that was creating monsters that looked really intimidating. I think in that sense, I do feel a little bit of the birth of its identity happening. In so much as like maybe the parts of the game, how they're put together, I'm not sure, although they do some unique things too. But I guess like in its premise, it would be hard to not be dismissive about it and be like, well, it's a party building game, and you have the same characters for the whole thing.
Yeah, something else I didn't know until I was doing some research for this was that, like, you take for granted that, like, video games are such a massive, collaborative, artistic endeavor, outside of a few exceptions these days. But of the era that Final Fantasy 1 came out, it was actually kind of uncommon for games to have multiple people working on it. You know, you might have like a musician and an artist and a programmer, but Final Fantasy 1 having like four main developers on it. You know, Sakaguchi, Amano with the art, Nobuo Uematsu, as well as a couple other people.
Nazar, the coder, at the time was a prolific Mac computer coding genius.
Yeah, what was his last name, like Jabbery?
I'm not gonna try to pronounce his last name, but he was essential in the making of the game, because he was like the primary coder, and Sakaguchi was like starstruck because he loved like his games, and he just he like asked for him to be on the team, and you know, he said yes because he felt like indebted to him. It's kind of cool to see like how much of Final Fantasy 1 is the way it is because of, like, I guess for context, Nazar was kind of inexperienced with coding RPGs, and unfortunately in Final Fantasy 1 it does show a little bit. But in a way, that's like the charm, the love I have of the original Final Fantasy is in its jank. To me, that feels timeless. I don't know, like there's a charm to it. You can see how people worked on this game. You can see that people worked on this game. It's something that I still think about to this day. Like the fact that you can, even the pixel remasters, you can still find the Easter eggs that Nazar put in there, paying respects to like that legacy, is always heartwarming to see. I wish I was a fly on the wall for like those meetings where he's just being like, I don't understand why when the character gets hit, why doesn't he just fall down? And Sakaguchi has to explain to him like, no, it's HP, so they only take points of damage. I just wish I was there for those conversations.
Yeah, oh god, having to explain just the concepts of like the most baseline things that you take for granted in an RPG is so so fascinating.
That game, wait, real quick. And the thing, like, I don't want to dismiss like the efforts of the developers for the game, because like Final Fantasy 1 was made in less than a year. Like, that's kind of crazy to think about, don't you think? I'm pretty sure it took like less than a year to make this.
In that era, it would be odd to take longer than a year or two.
They had to rush it. I'm either thinking of one or two, but one of those games took like less than a year to make. And it's to me, it's bonkers that that's even possible. And for what it is, it came out pretty fucking good, so.
Yeah, now obviously, like, Squaresoft is known for like a litany of other really iconic RPGs. I mean, Seiken Densetsu, you know, the Bouncer.
The Bouncer.
Why are we bringing up the Bouncer?
Squaresoft of the Bouncer fame. But no, what I'm saying is that, like, they're known for other RPGs, but really, like, Final Fantasy, it feels like almost the company is the Final Fantasy company, you know? Like, they have other games, but really it's just the one, when it feels like how much, like, reverence and importance.
This is their baby.
Yeah. So I think, like, losing the rest of the Final Fantasy games, like, feels like a major loss in identity. Even if they made just other RPGs that were, you know, of the same caliber and sales or whatever, however you want to justify it, like, to not have like these tentpole mainline games that are sort of like just have this legacy and through line of the people, like you said, like feels like that would be like losing a huge part of Square's identity. You know, because to this very day, like, we have like the how much reverence gets put on people like Yoshi P for his directorial skills and making sure that like Final Fantasy XIV is taking feedback and is like relevant and interesting. So, you know, that all started with 4 to 6 or so people, all with like unique and disparate talents, all really working on these games. And so, like, you know, I think that's the legacy of FF1 is like it's the people behind Square. You know, before FF became a thing, it was like it was putting artistry to a project like that.
Yeah, it and I'm very grateful for it. Again, I'm trying to think, like, in a world where that really is the Final Fantasy, I would actually, I feel like I would actually have a lot more fondness for it because it would be like unique. Now, like, I don't know, 30, 40 years later, I think I would people would look back on it as like the hidden gem of the NES. Like, this just happened once and never again. It's crazy for as nice as it. We would probably still see it at like GDQs and being ran and stuff just because of how unique it is. I do want to say, I kind of want to bust the myth here. It is not called Final Fantasy because it was the final game Squaresoft was going to make before going bankrupt.
I know, yeah. They wanted alliteration. It just worked.
Yeah, Sakaguchi just said, it sounds cool. It was originally going to be called Fighting Fantasy. He's like, anything with F would have been great because I just wanted it to be FF. Myth busted.
God, what if it was Fighting Fantasy? Like, y'all remember being 14 playing Fighting Fantasy 7? Fighting Fantasy sounds like one of the games that you make up in like your children's cartoon to be like, see, we know what the kids are about. Fighting Fantasy, adults,
It sounds like a parody of itself,
yes. Let's move on. Final Fantasy II. What if Final Fantasy II was the last Final Fantasy game?
So first, I want to ask.
First, Jorge, what is Final Fantasy II?
Oh, thank you. What is Final Fantasy II? Final Fantasy II is not kid stuff. I mean, it kind of wasn't. This is the game where like we start the developers. Final Fantasy 1 did great, and Square was like, all right, make another one. And they wanted it to be different. They didn't want it to be a sequel to the first game. They wanted it to tell a story, like a grand story. And yeah, this is the first Final Fantasy where like narrative takes like a more important role. I'm not gonna say it takes the front seat yet, because that doesn't happen till later, but it does. It becomes more important for there to be like a system, like politics, like kingdoms, worlds, people that are essential to the plot, especially those that are in your party. Your party now is composed of a fixed team of characters with three fixed characters, one space that is basically the story, like the chapter.
Yeah, the plot character.
Yeah, and this is kind of the first time where they started like really telling stories where like named characters can pass away and be like victims of the world around them.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of set the standard, to be honest. This is the first one where it became like important to tell a story.
Speaking of standards, you forget that Final Fantasy II has all of the stuff you associate with Final Fantasy is from 2. It's way more important than I think people give it credit for because Cid, Chocobos, Evil Empires, Leviathan, Ultima. It was going to have Moogles, but they got swapped to beavers at the last second.
Wait, that's great though. I like beavers. Thank God.
And this is also a game that is, I mean, obviously it's being developed in tandem, but this game comes out after Dragon Quest III had blown up. So this is them with like a fire under them trying to say like, like this is our story. This is what we have to say. And I think that it gets forgotten.
To answer your question about like, what if 2 was the last game? I think 2 would be the best Final Fantasy. Imagine a world where Final Fantasy 2 is the last one. I think people would revere it and respect it for what it is. People would really appreciate what it is.
I think it's be seen more in a light of like a series that got established and then tried to take a spin on its own. Because I do agree with your sentiment that Final Fantasy 1 still had things like crystals and airships and 4 fiends and things like that. But I feel like this would have been viewed in a lens of a Castlevania 2, a Zelda 2, where it's like the series took a weird spin on the sequel and some of it was a little ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was ahead of its time, not just in gameplay. Even though, like, this is an interesting question, actually. If this was the final Final Fantasy, I think people would have looked back on the battle system as something interesting and unique and, like, worth exploring, worth going for. Like, what would 3 have been like? They would have made this better. And also, it would have been like, wow, that's the one that had a story. That's the one that was like, Joseph gets rolled over by a giant rock. That was crazy, that moment. Oh my God. Oh, Layla's my favorite. Like, we would have people talking about too. It's what I'm saying, which doesn't happen.
Because I feel like with Final Fantasy II, it is more than just a response to Dragon Quest. Final Fantasy II is now finally what is a Final Fantasy, and I think that's what 2 is.
And I have to give Square credit and the Final Fantasy dev team a lot of credit because rarely do you make the first game and you know where to go. This worked. And this is why I kind of pushed back a little bit. I feel like 1 did have its own voice and they knew what it was. And the things that changed were really more like, how can we push this further? How can we like take exactly this and move in that direction? I would argue that they did it right. A lot of people don't like 2, but again, it's because like especially like US fans have like a very US perspective on Final Fantasy. We didn't play 2 until it came out on the PS1, so we don't know how important it was to the series as a whole, but it really is. It's like the one that starts like a lot of the things that are, like you said, like a lot of mainstays of the series were born in this one. It deserves credit for that. From 1 to 2, even on the NES, it's a big jump.
What I knew about that game for the longest time was just it's the one with the weird battle system. It's the one with the weird
yeah, that's so reductive.
Like the adventure game like word puzzle system.
Which I love. I don't know why they took it out. I actually love that. Yeah. It does so many interesting little things.
I feel like the game in the US gets seen more through a lens of that. It's like the weird one that didn't quite work. But you're right. I think that were there only 2, people would be forced to look more at the game through a lens of like what it did do, not necessarily comparing it to the battle system of, 16 other games, let's say.
I have a question. So in this hypothetical, would 2 still be Japan exclusive on the NES? Like we wouldn't get it until later?
Yeah. Let's say for any game like it releases the exact same way and then we get some remasters.
Okay, because I do feel like that would actually affect how the US views 2. Because again, like I feel a lot of people agree with you, and I agree with a lot of 2's mechanics, storytelling, and way of playing are affected by modern sensibilities. It's not a game that's easy to translate into like modernity just because it was trying so many weird things that were like novel at the time. That does hurt it a little bit in the US. That is why people think of it lesser than even 1 sometimes. And I wonder if we never got the PS1 ports and had that scope into like an old game through a new hardware, new lens, where like all the problems would just be highlighted. If it was just the NES game, would people have sought it out with more, I guess, conviction and been more charitable to it because they were like, wow, this is what we didn't have. This is, we missed out on this, the sequel to Final Fantasy, and it was actually great and it was doing cool things. Like, would the perception of 2 in the US have been more favorable if we never got the re-releases?
I feel like there would be a lot more critical reappraisal, but I think just as easily it could have been a like, oh wow, we didn't get this one, and like, look at how bad it is.
Yeah.
I think there still would be the kind of gawking at how much you can make that game unfun for yourself if you like grind or do weird janky things that aren't.
Yeah.
That was the wildest thing is in doing research. I found out that like if you just play the game like a not sicko and just use like osmos a little bit to level up your mana, like it's fine. It's not the only thing unfortunate about it is that it kind of punishes you from trying out new weapons later in the game, and that sucks.
Yeah, and there's just it is weird. It gives you so much liberty, but at the same time, it does punish you for odd things like that. Yeah. And I have to also remember, even with all my like, even in my fantasy world, where Final Fantasy II is the best one, the NES version was worse than the ports we got. Like mechanically, the way things leveled up was a lot slower in the NES version. It was a lot more obtuse. You really didn't know how to make it work until like you played it over and over. Yeah, these are things to keep in mind. I'm not so sure now.
I think it would have been seen as more of a novelty, but like I said earlier, I think there would be more critical reappraisal on like, this is a game with its own identity now. This is an early example of like political storytelling.
And that would have been cool, I guess. I don't know. I think that would have been great.
Yeah, I think certainly it would still stand out as more of a contrast to Dragon Quest. I think this is the game that made it into something, that was part of a conversation of like, what is an RPG? What is a Dragon Quest versus what is a Final Fantasy?
Okay.
But let's move on to Final Fantasy III, known in Japan as Final Fantasy III.
I love 3.
Yeah. So 3 is the one with it brought back classes, but these are jobs now. More importantly, you can change them on the fly.
Instead of being locked into like 6 classes to pick from. You now have a job system that evolves as you play the game, that lets you switch characters' professions on the fly, like between battles, which at the time was like, Dragon Quest isn't doing this. And in fact, it kind of was like a response to Dragon Quest III. They wanted it to have a more dynamic, job-changing system that allowed the player to really experiment with things and, again, not be locked into a decision for long term.
Yeah, but attaching it to the character that can just swap on the fly is so much more freeing than having to recruit another, class like from level 1. So
unfortunately, that did come at the expense of a little bit of the narrative, because like War 2 was a lot more rich in like how the characters are involved with what's going on in the world. 3 has to give that up in favor of having 4 characters that are essentially just templates for the job system. The world around them is the story. Like the characters they see is the story. Yeah. And you do still have like temporary party members that contribute to the narrative, but it makes you feel a little less like you're in the front seat and more like, oh, what's going on? Even like I don't know if you played 3, but like something I find cute about that game is how the main characters do have dialogue, but none of them are named. It's just text boxes that'll be like, oh, we're falling. I don't know. And it's just cute. You do have to let your imagination do the heavy lifting for whether or not these characters mean anything to the world.
Yeah, I think were this the Final Fantasy, I don't think we'd have as big of a like compare contrast between 1 and 2. Obviously, there'd be more than 2 games, but I feel like whereas if you only have 1 or 2, there's kind of a debate of like, do we want this complex game with weird systems and more organic, classes, versus a game that's a little bit more like locked in. I feel like 3 is a refinement of everything of that era up until that point. And it's really, if 2 is establishing, like, what is the Final Fantasy? What does it mean to be a Final Fantasy and not a Dragon Quest? 3 is a refinement of, like, no, like, a Final Fantasy, like, we've got it figured out. It's an organic, like, gameplay experience, like, that you're expressing storytelling through your classes. It's a game with, like, the good music and the good sprite art. And, like, I feel like 3 represents a mastery of that era of Final Fantasy. Like, obviously, it was the latest one to come out, but like when you listen to the music compared to the previous games, like it is a league above.
I want to say, and I want to clarify what you mean by this, because I know what you're saying. It's not that the music in 2 or 1 is bad or worse. In fact, I love the soundtrack in 2. Is one of my favorites of the series. But I'm blanking on his name. Nobuo Uematsu. He experimented with the hardware for 3 soundtrack in ways that like I don't really see a lot of other games did at the time for the NES. And there's just some like really haunting melodies in 3 with like using the hardware for the NES in like clever ways to make things sound like I think, and I can't remember if I read this or not, but I think what they did was like they had limited sound channels, but what they did is that they would use each channel as like more than just one instrument to make it sound like there's a percussion. And that's how you get like the cool battle theme that starts with like a doom 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 doom. It sounds like instruments. They really wanted it to feel like a band is playing. And then also with the more spooky tracks and the more ethereal tracks, I don't exactly remember how it is they pull it off, but there's like echo to some of them. You can tell what they want to be like a string instrument, a flute, or an air instrument, like that kind of stuff. Really, like it lives on as like an amazing effort on the part of like the devs into pushing the hardware. Yeah,
it's a lot more mastery of the tech. And to elaborate more on what you were saying, while I'm not an expert in this field of both music and video game music, I believe you can cheat a lot of early video game soundtracks by having the instruments of one on a sound channel and another sound channel. So, you're getting the percussion and the flute on one, and you're getting the other side of the percussion and the other side of the flute on another channel.
Yeah, that's what
so
it is.
So it's able to bounce between them as though there were more instruments or faster or echoes or transitions. So
and they pulled that off, and it's like, again, I still listen to this one just because I want to hear it again. I'm like, I forget if it's the underwater
The water
city.
temple.
Yeah, like there's 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 a track I just played in the video when we do the recording, but like I go back to it because I'm like, I need to hear that again. How did they do that? Like if this is the one Final Fantasy I wish I could play when it came out. Like I wish I was a Japanese kid when 3 came out and this was like my first Final Fantasy.
Well, and like one of
this would have altered my brain.
One of the attacks you can do, because this is the one with summons as one of the classes, and
Yeah,
Odin has an ability where he slices the screen samurai style, and it does the like split. And
that's amazing.
You know, think about like this era of Final Fantasy games. Like the first one, you have a box with the enemies and a box with your guys. Like the game is structured so it can barely like handle what's going on. There's a lot of things that this NES is really trying to just chug its way through. And to get this like to go from this like winga-dinga machine to an artistry of like faking all this stuff going on more than
effects,
the game. Yeah, having effects, having like a trickery to it. Excuse me. That's what I feel like 3 is finally starting to do.
This is the first one that also little things that again become like a mainstays. This is the first one that had the numbers show up as damage or healing on top of the characters instead of like in a text box, which streamlined the battle system. It made it flow quicker, and it's just a thing that stuck around and a lot of other games just replicated. Even to this day, if you see a little number pop up, that was Final Fantasy III. They did that shit.
But yeah, I see Final Fantasy III's legacy as like, no, this is the evolution of the NES era. Like, it's easy to say that, obviously because it's the last NES game, we know this. But like, I think now being able to view it as a trilogy, you can really see, like you said, Nobuo Uematsu just like mastering the system and what it can do. And I feel like it's realizing the potential of what it is they wanted to do with 1. You know, I feel like this is the most Final Fantasy.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it. This is the most Final Fantasy that came out at the time.
It's got the musics, it's got the graphics.
To a lot of people, this was their 7. You know, like or their 10, or their like whichever is like the big milestone one. This was like the realization, I guess, to your point. This is when it really was like, hey, Final Fantasy. I look for these things when I think of Final Fantasy.
Yeah, and
3 has them in spades.
While it lacks the melodrama of like this appeal to pathos, like connecting to the characters, yes, it does not have that. But you get these moments of like, but in my story, I had a summoner and I used this to fight this boss, and like everyone else was dead, and I used the final summon and it killed the boss in one fell swoop. And so you do get storytelling there. It's just maybe not the same as the more plot heavy too.
I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to touch on this real quick before we move on to the 16-bit era. But even from 1, there are hints of storytelling, like how much they wanted storytelling to be important in the game. There's a moment in 1 that I always think of when people tell me like, well, 1 didn't really have a story, and it's like, there's a moment I always think of. It's when you're trying to figure out a way to go underwater, and this girl is like, I can lend you my my submarine, but you need to have a thing that lets you breathe underwater. And when you finally find it, she goes, thank you, please save the mermaids. I really owe it to you. I'm indebted to you. And she like floats up and disappears. And it's like, that's crazy. I don't know. I still think of that moment like that was a ghost, like, oh my God. And again, it you know, even if the original, I think she just fucking like blips and disappears. It's still like it stays with you. It's one of those like even like like these little pixel characters are feeling things, and that's always been present since the beginning. And I feel like even 3, like I don't mean to make it, or my statement certainly, I don't mean to make it sound like it's light in story. This game also had like the semblance of cutscenes in them. Like when the airship first comes out, like it cuts to showing you the airship. It's like you're seeing the blueprints, the beginnings of like bones and organs of like later Final Fantasies.
Yeah, of cinematography in video games.
Yeah,
This is where it's it's punching above its weight, where it's showing what could be.
It's even from the very beginning, Final Fantasy games have always wanted to be like a showcase of how you can use hardware to as a storytelling tool.
And never is there more a fantasy than when a ghost gives you a snorkel.
Kind of is a snorkel.
Well, Jorge, why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, we can go on to Final Fantasy IV.
Final Fantasy IV いきますPresented by Square.
Did you know that Nazar, the coder for Final Fantasy I, had to develop Final Fantasy II and III from the United States of America because his work visa expired and he could not get it renewed? Why is my alarm going off? You're interrupting my segment. Oh, this is so lame. Oh, hello, Kyle.
Hello. What are you rapping about?
I was trying to do a funny little segment, but then my phone alarm went off because I set it to midnight because I'm not supposed to eat anything now. And it interrupted my fun fact segment.
What was your fun fact? Tell me about your fun fact.
Oh, my Final Fantasy, I had a funny name for it too. My fun Final Fantasy fact. Nazar Gabelli actually had to develop Final Fantasy II and III from the United States. In fact, the entire dev team moved to, I believe it was LA.
I think it was California.
Yeah, it was California. They had to move the entire dev team, and all the hardware to the United States to finish development on 2 and 3 because Nazar could not get his work visa renewed. And it's interesting how these two games that never made it to the US were actually made in America.
We are back, Jorge. I thank you for your fun fact. I feel educated and entertained and spiritually invigorated. But before we get to Final Fantasy IV, there's a random encounter. Jorge, I'd like to take a quick break with a segment I call Game Ratings. I'll present a category like Pokemon Middle Evolutions, games with tank controls, video game dads, and we present our most overrated, underrated, and accurately rated of each. Today's topic is boss and battle music of Final Fantasy 1 through 6.
Yo, but can we do the video game dads one sometime?
We can.
I actually can answer it. Okay. So this is our segment where we both share our nominations, votes for which of these is aptly rated, underrated, and overrated.
Boss and battle music of the Pixel Final Fantasies. Jorge.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, so
go ahead.
Yes. So my underrated, my underrated track for Final Fantasy battle themes, I actually think it's the main battle theme for 5.
Really?
And I say underrated because, like, I know even people who love it, like, that's great. I know there's people who love the soundtrack for 5. It's a fantastic OST. But I don't think people appreciate how good that Final Fantasy V battle theme is. You can make an anime intro to this theme. Like, just if you just give it a minute, just sit down and listen to, like, I wish I knew more about music because I could talk to you about, like, how, like,
if you look at Final Fantasy V's battle theme as like compared to all the others, it does sound like kind of the odd one out. But taking it on its own as just a battle theme, you're right, it is pretty good. It's just a lot more like poppy and peppy.
Yeah, that's what it is. It kind of reflects the spirit of the game, which was probably the more lighthearted of all the entries.
So if anything, it's more honest to like the rest of the game versus trying to hit this legacy.
Yeah, it's not trying to be epic, but it is like it does hype you up. Like, I remember I would get into fights just to listen to it, and in my head I would play like, bro, if this game had an intro, it would be this, or obviously the main theme.
Okay.
And then, do you wanna go you and me, or do you wanna?
I'll do. You said that was your underrated.
That is my underrated. Yeah.
I think maybe I'm mistaken on this one. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong, but I feel like even though it is a really hype boss theme, like I think 4's boss theme is underappreciated compared to some of the other boss themes. Like I feel like Decisive Battle, a bunch of the other like big ones from 6 come up in like the legacy.
I'm 100% with you here, actually.
4 owns. Okay, that's my like this is the musical term for it. It owns. It's so good.
That is my favorite boss theme in any Final Fantasy. I'll admit it right now. I think it's incredible how it like it uses the same bass line as like the main battle theme, but then it's like, I don't know, they did something to it to make it like more uncomfortable, and then it just like immediately picks up with the like doo doo doo, and as it keeps going, it just keeps elevating in tension until it goes da 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 da, and then boom, back down. Like it is underrated. You're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%. That is like my favorite boss theme. I don't get to talk about it enough. It's actually the one I get the most picky when I hear like remixes of it. I tend to be like the most nitpicking about it. I actually don't like how the Pixel Remaster covered that theme, because it deserves so much better.
Mhm.
But you know what? It's fine because it's the boss theme they used in Mario RPG's optional battle.
I'm telling on myself with that one, but yeah, absolutely. So what's your most overrated?
No, but
battle
it's
music of...
I still agree, bro. It's anyway.
But yeah, what's your most overrated?
Overrated. Okay. I'm gonna save overrated for last.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
Because it's fighting words. I'm gonna say for aptly rated, I actually think the Four Fiends theme in 4 is the one. It was a toss up between this and Big Bridge, because I feel like it might even be a tie, because I feel like Big Bridge is the one. It's like the one thing every Final Fantasy crossover references for 5, and I'm kind of tired of it. Like, let's move on from like 5 had so much other things, and we only ever fixate on Gilgamesh and the Big Bridge. But it is a good fucking battle theme. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it does fucking rock.
Well, ironically, I'll yes and you real quick and say that my overrated is Battle of the Big Bridge. If only because
so you were gonna
that is one of the best Final Fantasy songs, period. But I feel like it is unfortunate that overshines the entire rest of the soundtrack of 5, which does some really cool things.
That is exactly the issue I have with it, is that it's not only the track that gets most overrepresented for 5's soundtrack, it is the single aspect next to Gilgamesh that is the most overrepresented part of 5. Yeah. And it's like, we cannot move on from that, even though this game is just like brimming with like other memorable moments and things. Like the flying dragon theme in 5 is like my favorite flying theme in all of probably like the entire series, but I'm just gonna say Pixel series for now.
Also, maybe I'm just dumb for thinking of this, but would it not be better to save like Battle of the Big Bridge for like the final boss and have like a sillier theme for Gilgamesh? Like, I know maybe that's the joke, is that it's so epic, but
I mean, I disagree with this, because I feel like it is cool that Big Bridge is like a turning point in the story. It feels like that, like this again. Final Fantasy V is just an anime. It feels like that middle episode, like when shit is gonna get real from here on to season 2. It feels like that middle episode where like things escalated and we all remember that one moment. Like like the middle point of Gurren Lagann when like right before the time skip. Like that to me is Big Bridge in Final Fantasy V. That's like the big like climax before we go back down to like Act 3 and then like back up to the.
That's fair. That's fair. I'm maybe looking at it as a theme for Gilgamesh specifically. You're looking at it as like
that's what it's became. That's what it has become though, and you're right about that. So in that respect, I do kind of agree with you that it is a little overrated, but I will put it in personally in the aptly rated because it is a rockin' battle.
Listen, as long as you can justify your terms, I'm just saying it outshines, and for me that makes it a little overrated. But please continue.
You're absolutely right about that. But I was gonna say the Four Fiends theme from Final Fantasy IV, every time you fight the Four Fiends, has kind of become a meme for Final Fantasy IV fans, because like, I don't know if you're familiar with Hyodane, who was like a Japanese DJ that would like remix a lot of Final Fantasy tracks.
I don't think so.
His version of the Four Fiends theme kind of became a meme. Probably his most popular one, because of like he added lyrics to it. I should send it to you. It's actually really good. He added lyrics to it, and the Four Fiends are just all goofy, and it's great. And it became such a meme and such a cultural thing for the fandom that they hired him to remix the theme for Final Fantasy XIV. I don't know if you knew this.
Oh, okay. I have heard this one. Okay.
Yeah. And so again, that's where I would put the aptly rated, because like like you said about 5, the Four Fiends theme in 4 is kind of the one that outshines this. Like, you know how like everyone remembers Storm Eagle in Mega Man X as like the one track, and it's like there's so many ones that are better, but whatever. That's how I feel a little bit about Four Fiends. Like, bro, like the final battle outshines Four Fiends in my opinion, like any fucking day. But fine, it's good. I'm not gonna fight it. Whatever.
Yeah. So what's your most accurately rated Final Fantasy battle? That's okay. So then
that was it.
Okay, that's all. Okay. So I guess then the only thing left for me is my accurately rated.
Yeah, because you already said Big Bridge was your overrated pick.
Yeah, it's a very lukewarm take to say that Dancing Mad is really, really good.
Okay.
I'll
let you finish, but I'll tell you what I think.
I mean, I think in just terms of like the scale of what it was doing at the time and just how impressive it is as a song, and the fact that it's got these different bridges that like go with like the different tiers of Kefka that are like showing off these like these iconic poses that are like this kind of like hell and purgatory and heaven and all that, and it's the biggest RPG song like ever at that point. And I feel like while One Winged Angel elevates that and is an incredible track on its own, it is, I feel like, yes-anding something that already exists. I think for what Dancing Mad is doing of that era, it's like, yeah, it's the most impressive of the Pixel songs, and I think it's pretty fair to put that high up on the list, regardless of how you feel about it, just because of how impressive of a song.
Yeah, I'm glad you picked this one, because I do think about Dancing Mad a lot when it comes to this subject, the subject of battle themes. You know, to your point, Final Fantasy VII owes a lot to 6. 6 is kind of the prototype to 7 in a lot of ways, and this is one of them. Having that grandiose 8-minute track for a final boss theme, that's when it started. In fact, I'll tell you how I feel about Dancing Mad. I was mad that Theatrhythm cuts the song short. You can't finish it. It's not fully in there. I can't remember exactly when it stops playing, but it doesn't play the whole thing. And I actually was like upset. Like, this is like one of the most iconic final boss themes in the series, and you're gonna like cut it halfway because it's not One Wing Angel. Like, I'm a little mad right now.
Also, I get that probably they're taking the arcade track, but like, yeah, but there's a console version now. Like, put the full dang song in there, buddy. Like, make it the Dragon Force song.
It's the console. Yeah, it should be a long ass song. That, I mean, again, they put One Winged Angel in its entirety. It's not fair. This segues perfectly into my overrated battle theme. I'm sorry, everybody. My overrated battle theme pick is the Final Fantasy VI battle theme.
Really?
I think it's lame. I'm sorry.
You're talking about like the main one, right?
Just beat me over the head with it. I'm tired of hearing it.
Do you just not like the horns on it? Do you get tired of that?
It's one of the ones that like I actually was tired of hearing by the end of the game. I was like, I'm good, fam. Like, I'm gonna run away just because I don't want to hear this. I don't know exactly how to make an argument for this. Unfortunately, I just think it's the most repetitive of the themes, and I don't know why. Like, it stands out to me in like an otherwise fantastic soundtrack, just exemplary. The weak link to me is the one you hear the most. Like, it kind of sucks for that reason. And I don't care for it. I really don't. I know people love it. I can't even give you like a good reason why. I guess if I did have an argument, is that the boss scene is amazing. The rest of the game has like fantastic music. I don't know what happened here. It's repetitive. It's corny.
I will contend with you this.
Okay.
The Final Fantasy VI battle theme has the least different bridge between all of them, and I think that does a lot to
it like halfway through, you know, when it goes like dee, 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 it does the fucking psycho thing for some reason, and then it goes like I'm like, it's meandering. It's like finding a way to get back. What do we do? Okay, we're back. Okay. And oh my god, I don't know. I don't care for it. I don't care for it. It's literally bottom next to every other battle.
Dang.
Even two. Yeah, sorry everybody.
It's fine. It's fine. I get it. You just want sometimes you just want to burn the world down. I get it. It's just chaos. Jorge.
I start dancing mad when I hear that song.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Jorge, let's continue, shall we? With Final Fantasy IV. What if Final Fantasy IV was the Final Fantasy?
Then I would be like the happiest.
We're good. Like
yeah, I would be like, we're done. That's peak. It's peak. We can't do it.
And I'm like the 6 fanboy of the two of us, but like I've been playing 4 for the first time. I played like a little bit of it when I was younger, but I never finished it. And I'm going back on it and I'm realizing like, no, this is kind of like the modern video game.
Yeah, it's I know we said we were not supposed to like talk about how other games would have been influenced, but I feel like if 4 was the last one, we would have seen the echoes of it like ripple quite far, even if Final Fantasy would have been no more. We'd have remembered this one. It's still wild to me that this came out in 91, by the way. Like, it was almost a Super Nintendo launch title. Can you imagine buying a Super NES and this would have been like the first game you played? I just don't know how I would have coped with that.
Yeah, so Final Fantasy IV, yeah, you're right. It is an early SNES game. It's actually the first wholly unique RPG on the system because the rest of the RPGs were just ports.
Ports or remakes,
Yeah, so it's important to the legacy of the console's beginnings, but also Final Fantasy IV is the one in which you play as Cecil, a Dark Knight who has a change of heart after committing some war crimes for an evil empire.
Cecil, if you played the DS remake.
He has a "Are we the baddies" moment.
Oh, but he has it bad, and like it's my favorite thing about the game is the main character's in conflict with himself. Like he's like, maybe I am the bad guy, and you're playing him. You're like, oh shit, I'm the bad guy too.
And I'll connect from the segment in a second here, but like, this is a game where to truly atone for the sins of what you've done, and you do both hear and see like some bad shit that you do, and so in order to atone for it, you're told to go atop a mystic mountain called Mount Ordeal, and you have 2 mages to help you along the way, and all the enemies in Mount Ordeal are undead, and as a Dark Knight, you are basically useless, and you have to rely super hard on your mage friends in order to get through. And so it's difficult to do that. Like it's actually challenging, and you need to really like outsmart the game a little bit.
That game was hard.
Yeah, and then when you get to the top, you fight a shadow of yourself in a mirror. This version of you is the Dark Knight. Like, it only uses the Dark Attack, which damages all enemies and drains your health. And the only way to beat him is to either block or just heal yourself as you've ascended to a Paladin class.
Oh my god.
And so, like, not only are you having to like fight in an unconventional way, which, mind you, like this is like one of the early games to do that, to have like fake battles as cutscenes, to have unconventional battles that you're supposed to lose narratively.
Yeah, battles where you can't just like fight. You can't use brute force. You can't like fight your way through it.
You defeat the darkness in yourself and ascend to being a paladin, and already you have to start out at level 1, and already your health is higher than it was as a Dark Knight, and going down the mountain is trivially easy because you're just like ripping through enemies, dealing holy damage, and you're able to out heal all of them. That like you getting your levels back going down that mountain is basically just a victory lap. And so I feel like Final Fantasy IV is this early example of like, this is what video games as a ludo narrative could be. This is like storytelling through a sense of play, through a mechanic. I can tell you that this is what you do going up through mountain ordeals, but like you actually have to feel it and to see like, no, the game is easier now that I have protected others and I'm doing something for others now. Like I'm being rewarded for that. And so I think you have to consider, like, when this game came out, doing these kind of things is not really, it's not necessarily the first to do it, but this is not something that was common for how games could tell their stories.
It was, again, like, it was the devs pushing hardware, pushing the limits of what they could do of storytelling. I think for this one, they really, really wanted, like, story to matter more than 2. Even though I always say 2 is the first one that had like character drama, 4 is the first one where like it actually like all of those parts come together, and the gameplay takes like it takes a narrative first focus to the point where like aspects of the gameplay are affected by the story. And this is my favorite thing about 4, like hands down, is the fact that like there are story beats communicated through gameplay. Like one of my favorite examples is how Rydia, the summoner who has her city burned down, she cannot learn the spell of fire until she overcomes her fear of it. And like mechanically so, I'm talking like you can level her up all you want before a certain point of the story, she will not learn a single fire spell. I remember when I first noticed that, I was like it was, again, I played this game when I was very young, so it was again using gameplay as narrative, and to me that was like exhilarating. It's like, wow, this character feels real because of that. It's not just like a function of the game. This character has to overcome something personal before they can become a black mage, like fully realized. Same like you said, like another great example is how Cecil's Dark's ability will sap his health, and this is a mechanic throughout the game that you have up until you class change in the middle, and that is how, when you face yourself, that is how you defeat him. You have to wait for him to expend his own energy. It's such a powerful moment too, because like you think like you're facing yourself and you're like, well, it's just a boss battle. I can just fight. Like, darkness is weak to light, whatever. But if you fight, you will never defeat the Dark Knight. You have to like wait for the Dark Knight to defeat himself. Again, it's like a mechanic of the Dark Knight, which was introduced in 3. A cool thing that the Dark Knight can do is also like a storytelling device. That's fantastic. That's incredible to me. Like, even to this day, I marvel in that.
Yeah, it's just, you know, and like the list goes on, like, because we haven't even mentioned like Tella and the meteor spell and all that.
Yeah,
and
not having enough MP to do it. It's so good.
Until he has to like expend his life force to do it.
Tella, he has to, yeah. Poor
but
guy.
It's you know, not every character gets the same level of love, but like it's doing so much with its characters, and it's funny playing this game because going from like 3 and then to 4 and then 5 onward, comparing and contrasting with those two games surrounding it, it's extremely linear. It does not feel linear. You know, you get kind of hints of what you're supposed to do, but because the world is kind of big and because it's just sort of gesturing you in that direction, like, it doesn't feel too railroady. That game is designed for a very curated experience with a specific story it wants to tell. It's different from 3, but really it just feels like a fan fiction of 3, of like, this was what happened in my game.
Oh, yeah, that was Jeremy Parrish, I think.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. It was like they took the mechanical aspects of 3 and were like, we can tell a story with this, like, and each character is a class, and it's a brilliant way of looking at it, because it's like, and something I want to emphasize throughout this whole episode is how much the last game contributes to the next one, and replaying 4, I replayed 4 this year as well. Replaying 4 made me realize how much of 3 is in 4 in a good way. This really is a sequel to 3 in everything but what actually happens on the story. It still feels like an NES game. It still feels like it's grateful for how far it's come. Like, and to me, that's the beauty of playing Final Fantasies in order, is seeing how the first one communicates the next one, and so on and so forth.
When you look at Final Fantasy up until this point, you know, it's a very open-ended game, then it's a very structured game, then it's a very open-ended game, then it's a very structured game. It's really cool that they're still kind of finding their voice and trying to say what they want to say. And you're right, like, iterating off of each game. You know, a Final Fantasy game is not necessarily its own singular entry, even though they are telling their own stories, they're their own worlds, but like, they exist in the context of the Final Fantasy games that preceded them. They
really do follow the next one, which each one. Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're Final Fantasy IV, like the final Fantasy. Hey, what a banger of a note to end on.
We would have been like, this is one of the Super NES greats, one of the best games of all time. The remakes would have been received well, because this one at least was one that benefited from having re-releases because the version we got in the US, Final Fantasy II, was not the complete or the definitive edition by any stretch.
Yeah, cut a lot of features. Its localization was a little very limited. This was an era where they gave next to no resources and time to the people doing this, even though they expected them to really deliver for a foreign market.
As emotionally attached as I am to the original translation, like, I am grateful for like future entries being able to do more with the story and actually tell the kind of story that was trying to be told. And the DS remake is fantastic. In this hypothetical world, we potentially could have gotten Bravely Default because this is kind of how Bravely Default started. It was like a Final Fantasy III got a remake on the DS, then 4 got a remake on the DS, then they did a spin-off called Final Fantasy Heroes of Light with the same aesthetics, the same menu system, all this stuff, and then Bravely Default happened. Which, if you haven't played Bravely Default, it's like it borrows a lot from 4, and in a good way. It's yet again more Final Fantasy fanfic, in the best way.
Yeah. Side note, by the way, I think I found the best way to play Final Fantasy IV because that is something that is difficult about the game. Is all of the
it really is.
All the versions of it have something that isn't quite right.
Yeah, there's no definitive version in the US, unfortunately. If you cannot read Japanese, you cannot play this game the way it was meant to be.
Because you're either missing features or you're getting a less than stellar localization. Whether it's any version of the Super Nintendo or the ports or the Pixel remaster. But I found that there is a ROM hack called, I believe it's the Namingway edition. And it basically just restores the combat to be a little harder and more feature rich like the Japanese version, and it just does a little bit more of I'll say literal, just in the sense that it's accurate to what the intent is supposed to be of a translation. And so I feel like if you want to play Final Fantasy IV and get the best version of that story, like, I don't have a lot of context of what to compare it to other than what I've heard, but like it feels compelling and authentic in a way that is still of its era. It's not overly using swears like a lot of these translations tend to do. It's saying what the game was trying to say in as limited of a amount of text as it had.
Yeah, I want to try this version out because I have not played any like other fan translations for 4. But you're right. The biggest issue with 4 is that like it's really hard to recommend to new Final Fantasy fans because the best you can do, in my opinion, is like either the PS1 version with the awful load times, but a better translation and actual skills from the original, and as well as, I don't know if you knew this, the dev team room was taken out of the US version, but is in the PS1 version, and only in the PS1 version in the US. This is a very important thing about the game. You know how like Chrono Trigger had like a dev room that you could unlock? Final Fantasy IV had that, but only the Japanese version.
I'll have to see if it's in the Namingway edition then.
Yeah. Oh, and I think it's Namingway because it's the guy that changes your name.
You're right.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know if you're doing that on purpose or not.
No, yeah, I just kind of read it very bluntly. So, see, localizing intent is difficult if you don't have the context for these things.
Yeah, true. But I would still think like right now the Pixel remaster is okay. I still have problems with it, but it's only because I'm so emotionally attached to the game. This is like the one I'm most emotionally attached to because it was my first Final Fantasy.
I will say, as many problems as I have, like nitpicking ones with the Pixel remasters, I still think they are some of the best ways to play these games. Just in terms of someone who's never touched a Final Fantasy game, being able to just like easily find them and just jump in and play it without a lot of hurdles.
I would say like 1 through 3, the Pixel remaster versions are like the ones I would push people towards.
Yeah.
Once you get to 4 is when I start going, well, what kind of experience are you looking for? That kind of.
I mean, I still think just if you're talking about like someone who's going like, yeah, I really want to try just Final Fantasy, and maybe they just don't have a lot of the predilection to like do a patch or whatever. If you just want to throw them like a Switch copy of like 4 Pixel remaster or whatever,
or
I feel like
emulate.
I feel like it's a great way to start, and you would do far worse. And like there are
a
lot of modern ports like wish they were as well done as this. So
Yeah. I get all cranky when like all the mode 7 stuff is no longer there, because that was important to the original, you know, like seeing the things they did. Again, I keep saying this word, but the things they did with that hardware and all the funny little things they got away with just because they could, is reflective of that, of that era. It's like context to how that game is so important now, and how much it paved the way for the future of the series.
Yeah, no, like I said before, if it had to end with any of these games that we're talking about, I don't think 4 would have been a bad one to say, like, that's it.
We might have gotten like a Final Fantasy VII style remake of 4. Holy shit. Anyway.
I do think of the game, like, I gripe so much at the Final Fantasy VII remake, but honestly, if you had a version of 4, I think that honestly could work.
I would die for it.
Of all the games. But let's move on to Final Fantasy V. Jorge, what's Final Fantasy V's deal?
Before you go, we continue.
Yes.
I gotta give a shout out to our boy Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. What if we ended at Final Fantasy Mystic Quest? Which came I think right after 4, yeah. And
I think so.
Before 3 in the U.S.
It would have to if I just said that 4 was the first original RPG. I mean,
I guess not much would be said. A lot of people would have just been like, "Okay, that was nice."
Yeah, it's fine.
I am a Mystic Quest defender. I do stand by that game. It is an 8 out of 10 for me. I will not hear any arguments.
You know, the nice thing I'll say about Final Fantasy Mystic Quest,
I know what you're gonna say.
Is it that the boss theme has no right to go as hard as it does?
It's the entire soundtrack doesn't have any right to go that hard. It's like this is the most, I'm gonna say, this is the most mundane Final Fantasy. Like, it's slow paced. It's extremely like by the numbers, predictable story. That soundtrack carries the fuck out of it from start to finish.
The funniest thing about it is they already made Final Fantasy IV easier for USA, and it's a very very streamlined game. There's not much you can do wrong in that game, and it's just kind of funny that like, oh no, we're going even simpler with Mystic Quest. Okay.
No. We need those Yankees to play RPGs. What are we gonna do? Make a baby RPG game, but put like cool music in it, because Americans love cool music.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Oh, and my Jorge Final Fun Fantasy fact: the reason Final Fantasy is called Mystic Quest in Europe is because the first one to get localized was Mystic Quest. And that's why they kept that name for a while. I can't remember when I think 7 is probably universally when like everything got homogenized. But Final Fantasy was called Mystic Quest in UK because Mystic Quest was the first one that got ported.
Weird.
And it just stuck as the name. Yeah. Anyway, here we go. Final Fantasy V. What is Final Fantasy V? Final Fantasy V is actually the most anime Final Fantasy.
It's so Saturday morning cartoon. And I mean that lovingly.
All positive. Yeah, all of this is positive. And honestly, it shines in my opinion for that reason. It is like it kind of shifts in tone to be more in line with kind of like how 3 was, where it was like a little more about how interesting the world could be in like a comedic way, whereas all other Final Fantasies kind of had like a more serious tone. This one was a little more lighthearted, a little more humor.
Yeah, you start as Butts, a man who rides a chocobo.
Butts the man.
Butts the boy.
Boy.
Who rides a bow. But yeah,
Boko, his Choco buddy.
You're Butts and Boko. You ride your chocobo, and then a meteor comes down from the sky, and you're called into action to save a maiden and get some crystals and fight some fiends and steal a pirate ship. It is
honestly
a boppin' adventure.
One of my favorite like intros is 5, like that Princess Lena, like waking up the dragon to like run away there's something for a game that is like mostly lighthearted. It has such a like beautiful intro. I don't know, and the theme music if you let the title screen idle for a little bit, the theme music that kicks in, it's vibrant, it's energetic. It motivates you. You're like, oh shit, I'm going on an adventure. It's the most like it's the most jovial, I guess, Final Fantasy. If I were to look for a word.
Yeah, and also this is the one that has the job system, and it's the most realized.
They brought it back for 5.
Mm-hmm. Because in this version, you can level up a job and carry over certain things of that job while you have your main job equipped. So if you level up a few times in White Mage, you can carry over some passive abilities and some stats and magic if you swap over to a Black Mage, if you want to say, like, this is my caster character. Unlike 3, the characters have a little bit more of their personal identity. So while you might lean towards certain jobs with certain characters, like you don't have to. You can do whatever you want with them. So it is a very personal story, but it is starting to try and bridge that gap between 3 and 4 and having a personal narrative that is trying to tell a much grander story about characters.
I think it's cool. More people should play it. It for some reason it's like I feel like less people played 5 than 2 in the US. I don't know if I'm correct in that. So it often kind of becomes ignored. It kind of gets skipped over. It's like the double Zeta of Final Fantasy. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge it, but people who do are like, no, this is one of the good ones, and you're missing out if you skip it. I guess like if this was the last one, maybe that mentality would change. Like I think people would look at 5 more favorably. Especially since, considering that, we probably would have gotten like the PS1 and the GBA and the Pixel Remaster versions of it. And then kind of for it to be like the last one, it might make some people sad because it doesn't really have like as grandiose of an ending as like 4 or 6 have. It does have an interestingly poignant ending, like that slightly changes depending on who lived and who died in the final battle, which is, again, for a game that's like mostly like a cartoon, a Saturday morning cartoon. It has just these like gripping moments like that. It's worth trying out, honestly. If this is just me telling people to play 5 more, then yeah, so be it. This is what we're doing.
And I don't know if we explicitly said it, but 5 is the one that got away. So it was. Oh,
it was going to get localized.
It was. Ted Woolsey was going to do the localization, but it just never worked out. I don't know the exact, if it was time, money, or whatever, if they were focusing more on 6.
It might have been time, because like the problem is that localization took a lot longer back then. And I think by that time, 6 was like, well, we need to launch 6 because the N64 is coming. So it's now or never with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember 5 was like handed down to a different localization team for a bit, and then they did like a pretty shitty job with it, and then Square got mad and then pulled that plug. And I'm honestly wondering if that contributed to it, which if it did, I would be very upset. I don't know if maybe we can link it in the comments or something, but like there is like an interview between like the old Final Fantasy V translators and like what they were doing while the project was going on, and I'm reading it going like, what were you guys thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, if I find out this is why we didn't get 5, I will get so mad. I cannot remember the company, but yeah, it was kind of a failed venture. They just ended up translating 3 or 6, and because it was just worth their time and money more, in my opinion.
5 also, I think, I didn't realize this doing my research, but 5 has a legacy of being one of the earlier, bigger fan-translated projects, because this was, of its era, this is a time where emulation is starting to become a more viable thing. You can download ROMs and things on the internet, so that's a little bit more of a global thing. You can run emulators on your computer because they're like powerful enough to run a Super Nintendo emulator on them. And so this is of a time where people were doing the work and actually like going through the game files and changing them like hex by hex to make an English version. And that's just not like that's not something that happened before 5, not really. And so I think that would have been a major part of its legacy, is like kind of the first fan translation.
And it is like, I remember when people were like talking about 5 and how much they love it, even though it even though it wasn't like in the US. I actually I remember hearing about this too. And when we did get 5 on the PS1, they used parts of the translation that I was talking about earlier. So when I wish I could credit the original translators for 5. Did we have that in the notes or no? We'll put it in later. But like the original, the fan translators for 5 saw the official translation. They were like, this is insane. How is this so bad? Because it was in fact like the old translation that or parts of the old translation that Square ended up like cutting for the Super NES version somehow. Like a notorious example is Ferris's pirate accent was not in the original, but for some reason the English translation thought that they should have a pirate accent because they're a pirate, and it's just the most awkward shit ever. And the fan translation didn't have this. Ferris was a character, it wasn't a caricature. Yeah. These things, like, it makes me wonder, like, why, like, maybe this is why we didn't have it.
Yeah. I'm always very empathetic too to like localizers, and whether they be fan or official, but like,
sure, yeah.
I think the first like big group to do it, because I think there are multiple groups kind of trying at it, but the first one that really actually like get something off the ground, like, for a while it was the best translation. And I think part of the strength of it was the fact that they didn't have to answer to anyone. You can just literally do the translation, and that comes with a lot of baggage, because then you have the luxury of putting in more swears, making it edgier, putting in your own jokes. But like at the same time, you don't have to go through a corporate hierarchy that doesn't quite understand how things sound in English and doesn't want to defer to your expertise. So it is kind of incredible that like, a bunch of kids can do this, can like crank out a fan translation in a summer because they don't have to deal with corporate Square. And that is an incredible boon. Okay,
so I found it. It is RPGE. That is the FF5 translation that became popular and prolific to the point where like many other people got into fan translation because of it.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think the legacy of what 5 would have been is like, without 5, I don't think you get things like Mother 3. And I think it represents like an era of a closing of the gap of video games as a global medium.
Once again, I will say play 5. Oh, and also watch the Final Fantasy OVA, Legends of the Crystals, which is a sequel to 5. It's actually the first Final Fantasy sequel ever made. And a lot of people say it's goofy and weird and awkward. I say ignore all of them. It's wonderful. It's funny. It's dumb. It's silly. It's the perfect OVA. Please watch it.
Well, why don't we get on to the big boy of this evening, Jorge? Final Fantasy VI. Numero 6.
I'm not gonna do the whole thing.
I mean,
where
do you even begin? Because like, in going back to this game and playing 4, it strikes me that like when people think about the 16-bit era, they think about like 6, and like 6 is kind of the blockbuster of its day. Whereas when you play 4 is like a gussied up NES game. It is clunky in some aspects, and 6 has a lot more of like menus that make sense and do what you want them to do, and is like functioning, even though that game is like held together by shoestrings by all accounts.
6 is to the Super NES as 3 was to the NES. I think by that point they were like, wow, we can do so much with this, and we are. And yeah, instead of following tradition, they decided to push the medium a little bit more.
So
to great results. 3
Yeah.
is fantastic.
and
I mean,
speaking,
6, sorry.
I'm 3-6. Yeah.
Sorry,
So
Yankee
yeah.
mistake. My bad.
Well, no, and segueing off of tradition, this kind of follows the history thus far, that every other game seems to be either focusing more on a narrative versus an expression of character creation. So we've got 1, 3, and 5 focusing about classes and jobs and your version of the story, and now we have 2, 4, and 6 that are focusing more on a world with a very structured narrative.
Yeah, it's a story that focuses on how the world afflicts the characters, how they're not victims, but rather like just like what their relationship is to the setting. I feel like it is more in focus in 6.
Yeah, 6 is a game with an ensemble cast in which you play as Terra, a magic user in a world that needs technology in order to foster that same sort of power, in order to kill off older beings that have natural magical abilities. You're brainwashed as part of an evil empire. Through a series of events, you're able to join up with a bunch of the rebels and fight back against this fascistic empire. And I think it's the most, like, maybe 2, I think, has a little bit more going on than to its credit. But, like, 3, it's not just the quote-unquote evil empire. Like, you have a dinner with, like, their dictator. I think it has the most time to spend on, like, its world and its lore.
Yeah, they do a good job of showing you like the conflict between the Empire, the Espers, and the Resistance, or what are they called? The
Returners.
The Returners. Thank you. It does a good job of having, which I think is what kind of what they wanted for 2. They wanted to have like this larger scale conflict going on. Something I like about 6 a lot is how it is a world that is where it doesn't have like a strict aesthetic. It kind of borrows from a lot of things to like mix and mash up like a lot of genres in terms of storytelling. Like the Empire looks high tech and it's powered by magic, but there's cities that are still like in like the medieval times.
Yeah, feudal.
Feudal, and I don't know, for some reason 6 puts all that together really well, even though they shouldn't all work. And it has another thing I really like, where it's a story about how magic power is used as like a tool of war, a weapon of war, and is how the Empire is able to progress militarily. This power that was once belonged to ancient beings and the Espers is now in the hands of like the wrong people, and they're abusing it. And I don't know, I really like stories like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's like an environmental element to it. There's, like I said, it's about like kind of the end extremes of fascism. It's doing a whole lot with its story, and
also what I love is how I think this is the first one where the villain really played an important role in the story. Because even though I love Golbez in 4, Golbez ends up being more of like a tool for the actual bad guy.
Yeah, he doesn't.
And then X-Death, I love X-Death to death, no pun intended. But he also is just like, I am the manifestation of evil.
Yeah, they're more concepts that don't really have their own motivations, which is funny because Kefka seemingly does not have motivations. He's just the Joker, baby. But to me, like I said a little bit earlier, like Kefka is the logical end state of like extreme fascism. It is this complete denial of the world around you that would say like, I need you, my subordinate, to brush off my shoes in the desert because they've got too much sand on them. It's like a complete refusal of the reality of the environment to the world around you. It is just sort of there's a chaos to that.
Oh, so an interesting thing I heard from our friend David. He saw Final Fantasy VI as like a play.
Yeah, that's how I've always put it. It's an opera.
It's very intentional. Yeah, it's like a stage play, an opera. And when he said that, something clicked. I was like, oh shit, Kefka is playing off script. He's like the fourth wall character. He's like the one that's like fucking with the audience and like and like trying to ruin the play while it's happening and trying to distract you. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Like now Kefka has like an added layer to me because of that. Like, yeah, his whole thing is to like just fuck with the order of things. In not even, I don't even think that like, and there is a backstory to Kefka. Like, it's magic is what turned him crazy, is because he was like, he's the one, he was like, quote unquote, the scientist for the Empire that would study magic.
Yeah, the failed experiment on putting Esper powers into people.
Yeah, but then he experimented on himself, and that's how he like lost his mind. But then now he's like, he doesn't even really care about conflict so much as like, well, how do I destroy everything? Like literally, and it's because there's like this nihilism to him where it's like, I think at the end of the game he says something like hopes and dreams, these things mean nothing. Like, I'll destroy them all. Yeah,
why wouldn't I tear it all down? I can. Yeah,
basically, and even the Empire's like insignificant, next to the power of the Joker. So there's an interesting an interesting thing that happens in 6 is that suddenly our villain is clear. Like, this is the villain. Like, there is no, it's like in previous Final Fantasies, there's always like an ultimate evil pulling the strings. In this game, it's like he's been there this whole time, and at the end battle is directly like face to face with Kefka himself.
I think,
and that's kind of when Final Fantasy started having like a more important villain role.
I think where 4 is the first modern video game, 6 is like an early cinematic video game, more so than ever before.
Again, 6 is in a lot of ways the prototype to 7.
And I think in addition to that, its legacy is that of it's the last game to feature Amano as a major proponent of his art. This is the first game to have Sakaguchi doing art alongside Amano, so that's his start with
no, you mean Nomura started in 5 actually, but Nomura in 6 started having a more like equal role to Amano, designing. In fact, I think he did more than Amano, and you can actually tell which one was Amano and which one was Nomura by looking at the sprite art for the monsters. A lot of Amano art is like very 3-dimensional. Like, the monsters are almost facing you, the player, instead of the of the characters. And a lot of like Nomura's enemies are like facing the characters like head on, except for the goddess, which is one of my favorite designs of his.
Yeah, but the fact that his art holds up like shows that Final Fantasy now is more of a style than it is just singular artistic people.
I mean, for Nomura, this was kind of a bit of his breakout role, or the start of his breakout role, when before 7, when he became like character designer for like the main cast. Although I think he did contribute to designs for the main cast, like Shadow Setzer and someone else was Nomura's brainchild. There's one more character I forget.
Maybe it was Locke. But you're right. He did a couple though.
Yeah, this is when he was starting to become like more important, a key member of the staff. Who and then he would become like a big name. Like, we didn't know this at the time, but
yeah. And this is also on our end. This is Ted Woolsey's first big project.
Oh my god!
The localizer for that and Chrono Trigger localizer. For Chrono Trigger and Mario RPG. Him basically getting free reins is a lot of the reason why Mario RPG is as funny as it is, because it just kind of worked like that. He had a month to do it or something insane.
It took me a while to understand the term Woolseyisms. But Mario RPG is probably the best example of that in script.
But going back to like Final Fantasy 1, like this is an art made by very like individual people, and Woolsey's a part of that. In localizing it, there's an artistry to that. It is a style of creative writing.
He had months to translate this game by himself. It's still wild to me. It's still wild to me that he did it.
Yeah, and also think about it this way, like, you don't necessarily have like the full context of where all the stuff lines up. You maybe get a little bit of time to test it, but not that much. So the fact that it functions at all is kind of incredible.
I was watching. They gave him the script. It wasn't even like in paper. It was like a document with like a bunch of text dumped into it, piecemeal. Like it was not in chronological order. They just dumped text into a file and told him translate this, and we'll put it in the game. It's incredible that we even got a cohesive translation despite all this.
So yeah, and so I think that's like its legacy is storytelling on a scale that had never been seen before for the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah, the scale was crazy and incredible. Like I think this game is double the length of 4.
Yeah,
which is for a Super NES game that is long. And that's without doing all the side quest stuff.
Yeah, and like while it's not necessarily doing things that 4 was like incapable of doing, like it's iterating off of that game, but it's not necessarily like reinventing everything from the ground up. But like the fact that it's able to do like its big twist of like the world ending and the game continuing, and like the scope of reusing the game's content like that to basically not quite double its length, but nearly, is incredible. And like again, like 3, it's just showing a mastery of like just what you can do with the Super Nintendo when you have people who are like both the experts in their field and also new blood adding to a project like that. So obviously, like this is the most impressive one of the batch so far. And
I was gonna ask, like, isn't this your favorite of the pixel era Final Fantasy?
It is, but I feel like in doing research for this, I've come to appreciate kind of how the other games do this in their own ways. This level of scope. I mean, God, just the soundtrack alone, like, is Nobuo Uematsu, like, I think at his very best. I truly do.
Everything from I think this game has one of my, probably next to 7, my favorite like way Final Fantasy starts, because everything from like the very beginning until like Escape from Castle Figaro when they got on the Chocobos. I remember when I first, because I played this game back when it was 3 on the Super NES. I remember just being captivated.
This game has an opening credits. Like,
yeah, it had opening, and it did such a great job of building the mystery up from like the very beginning of like what's going on, and having like the ensemble cast shines from the very beginning too. When as soon as Locke and Terra meet, there's a dynamic between them. Mog and his friends show up, and you're like, oh, this is really cool. This is cute. I love it. Like I have full confidence that like the reason this game did so well in the US is because of those beginning like 3 to 4 hours were just like hitting the mark consistently.
Yeah, it is a vibe. Think about like the era in which this is leaving off. Then we get Final Fantasy VII, then we get Metal Gear Solid, StarCraft, Half-Life 2. Like, these are games that are coming out just a couple of years later. Yeah,
crazy to believe.
I know, and so it's wild to me that like we already had so much of like storytelling. It's not that big of a leap, except graphically. I think with a lot of the games that would come. Yeah. It's amazing how 4 feels modern in the sense of this is how we do storytelling, but it's clunky. It's older. 6 feels like much more like how we would just tell a story nowadays. Through a video game.
Yeah, and 6 is the one that I feel like is the most accessible story-wise to like people who are more like the PS1, PS2 era Final Fantasy. And it's because it has a lot of the modern aspects of Final Fantasy in it. The ensemble cast, the fact that you can switch your party out after a while, a very easy to understand battle system, but like complex when you scratch the surface. It's accessible for modern audiences, even though it is like a pixel era. It does a lot right even to this day, and a lot of people hold it in high regard for that reason. And I feel like if this was the last one, again, it would be like just a high note. Like, we would actually be sad. We would actually be like, why the fuck did they stop?
What if they made this in 3D?
They almost did.
Yeah. Funny enough, like I like the idea of a 6 remake that's in the style of Final Fantasy VII is like makes me barf in my mouth a little bit.
Yeah, it would. I
It would
think
be
it would
so long.
suffer of the pixel era Final Fantasies. If 6 got a remake, I think it would suffer the most from like bloat.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, you remember that they did try to remake 6 as a 3D game for the N64.
I don't know if was it a remake or was it just a tech demo?
I think okay, you're right. I think it was a tech demo, and it was just kind of building up to what 7 was gonna end up being anyway. But I still love seeing those like that hidden found footage of like Celeste doing a single like a regular attack, and it just like a cinematic like like she runs across the screen and attacks one enemy, and that was it. That's the attack. I'm like, wow. They were going way too hard.
Oh god! Imagine actually playing like that game. It would have been miserable.
Yeah, if we got that instead of 7, where it's just like hyper cinematic to a fault, clunky as shit on the poor little N64 that can't even handle that.
N64 would have had maybe 4 RPGs at that point. Incredible.
we wish it did.
Well, Jorge, I think this is as good a time as ever to ask, what's the legacy then of the pixel Final Fantasies?
I think it's a robust, wonderful legacy that enriched our culture as the gamers. Sorry, I don't mean to be.
I mean, it's okay to be a little lofty because, like, in playing these games and researching, like, no, like this is where a good chunk of storytelling in video games comes from. It really is all just these games and the people behind them.
Yeah, I think where Final Fantasy innovated the most was in using hardware to tell story in an RPG. Because you can argue that like Final Fantasy is just Dragon Quest, it's just wizardry, it's just Ultima. But I think that probably is true. Dungeons and Dragons, I would not argue against any of that. But I would still say like they did bring what Final Fantasy brought to the table was a new way of engaging with characters in an RPG, whereas like we were used to RPGs being like, no, I tell the story because I'm the main character. Final Fantasy was like, no, like hear me out, and then we did, and it was great, and we're like, okay, fine, keep going, do more of that. Actually, we love it. That's where I feel is like the strongest influence of the series for like gaming in general and like game development and design. Something that you see to this day. Even if we didn't have, let's say the last one is 6. Even if we didn't have 7, 8, 9 forward, I still think many games we play now would have taken cues from Final Fantasy as a series and paid tribute to that and be like, that was a really cool series that I don't know why it ended.
Yeah, I still think you could get a Claire Obscure if you never had a game after Final Fantasy VI.
Exactly.
Well, Jorge, Final Fantasy 1 through 6 has taken us to many different incredible worlds, but the one place it hasn't taken us is the Question Zone.
Welcome to the Question Zone. Get ready.
Yes, we've solicited a number of questions. You can contact us at brainlordspod@gmail.com. Jorge, take us away. What is our first inquiry?
Our first inquiry, Moga Boo Boo asks, would you want any of these titles to be remade in the scale and scope of Final Fantasy VII Remake? If so, how would that change the nature of the game in essence?
I mean, I think we sort of hinted at this
answered the
already.
question,
Is 4, I think, because it's so streamlined, I think could work better than most of the other games if you had to.
Yeah. Now, 4 did already get a remake, and it is great, and it kind of does prove that like 4 lends itself well to reinterpretation. That's the reason I feel like the pixel eras would benefit from remakes, is because like you can take some liberties, you can enhance and parts of the story with a little bit of like flair and flourish. But if I could do it all over again with 4, I would. Like I think that game would look gorgeous, and like I don't know if you remember the cutscene, the CG cutscenes they did for DS remake.
Yeah.
those look phenomenal. If the game looked like that, I would be happy.
Well, you know, and
Or even if they tried something bold and new, I would love it.
yeah, I think like to their credit, I think what the Final Fantasy VII remake games do is like you really feel like each character is different in how their combat plays. And so like I think it would it would be really cool to like you go up Mount Ordeals and you're just whacking on enemies and you're useless, or like maybe you're not even using like Cecil at all, you're swapping to the other characters, and then to just like completely change your play style to be more defensive would be pretty cool. It's like, no, you need to relearn what your thumbs are doing. I think could be pretty cool as a way to experience like that story through more play.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that in my head I can envision perfectly. Like you were talking about Mount Ordeals going up, and you're like, oh, I'm not gonna use Cecil because he fucking sucks in this area, and I'm like, yo, Palom and Porom, like, just going at it together, doing twin casts, bouncing around. And I'm like, oh, that would be so fucking dope.
Yeah, imagine like you've got to like use like the both sticks to control them, like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons or something. That would be so cool.
Just neat little things like that. Yeah. Like I think 4 would benefit from a full scale remake. I know Square Enix is never gonna do it, but it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I can dream.
Well, that was. I'm glad that we both basically had the same exact answer on that.
Honestly, yeah. I think that's the one I would pick.
Yeah. Let's move on to our next question. This is from Final Fantasy Mystic Chex Quest asks, using elements from previous Final Fantasy games, what would your perfect FF be? Example, the combat of FF7 Remake, both the world of Ivalice starring Vivi.
All right, I'm going to say it. Just bring back the materia system and like better.
The one thing,
the best shit they ever came up with.
The only downside is I feel like other than the limit breaks, the characters just don't feel distinct from one another. But I do like that you can.
Oh, when you do.
Yeah. Like
it's a customizable thing.
Yeah. I think I want to see another game with like the job system again from 5. But one that really commits harder to its characters, like a 6.
Okay.
You know, like
right.
like the characters of like 9 are some of my favorite characters, just bar none. And I feel like there's so many cool things that you could do with the jobs, where like maybe each character doesn't get access to every single job or something if you want to like have a bit more narrative cohesion. But I think you can do a lot with like dressing up a character in different ways to how they express, like, what is a black mage to Steiner? What is a lancer or a dragoon to a Zidane? I think
I'm curious. Have you ever played Bravely Default?
I need to. I know that's a lot of what that game does.
You're describing Bravely Default.
Okay, well, there you go. Just give me Bravely Default.
That game, I don't like class systems. That game had a good one. I loved it. And it's character focused. Like I mean, okay, I will say that what you said about like if your job change or job switching and classes could inform how the characters like interact with other things, that's the one thing I feel like Bravely Default was kind of missing. I actually do want a game like that where like maybe changing classes does affect the story in some way, or the character growth, or interactions and dialogue. Like that shit would be cool.
Yeah, give me 9, but the ending is closer to 6 because I love 9, but the less lore it has, the better of a game it is.
Yeah, there's that part at the end where it just kind of goes, it's like comes out of nowhere with this like other planet shit, and you're like, what? Okay, I get what it's trying to do. It's kind of in line with the theme. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, a lot of the FFs are a lot stronger. The fewer proper nouns they have.
Do you think 9 is like the worst example of that, or?
It's more like when it tries to get into the nitty gritty of like what is Zidane's whole deal and like the mist and all that. It cuts away from like the cool thing that it's trying to say with like Vivi discovering his humanity and like what does it mean to be like alive even though you're like a tool of war. Like there's so many cool things. I think if they cut out like like characters of like the like 3/4 of the way through, like Kuja's whole tribe. If it was more about like, it's not chaos in that one. It's Necron. If it was more like Necron being like, oh, humanity only ever creates like tools in its own image to kill itself. Like, okay, if y'all want to do that so bad, like that's where I don't mind maybe fighting like a concept out of nowhere if it's thematically consistent with the game. But I just feel like in trying to explain the origin of its world so hard, it just loses the connection that the characters have with each other.
Yeah, we can go into this for the next time.
Definitely.
But I have thoughts about Final Fantasy IX that are kind of about this precise thing. I guess I'll add a little more to my answer. Like, yeah, I kind of want materia. I want... Okay, so you brought up something and it made me think, like, this is the problem I have with 8, actually, where, like, the world is interfering with the character drama that I'm actually interested in. I don't know. Did you ever beat 8?
I know the story of 8.
Yeah, so 8 does one of my favorite things ever, and it's one of my least favorite Final Fantasies, ironically. But it does one of my favorite things ever, where it's a story about like two people who could not fall in love, but then their next generation does. Like, that to me is like beautiful. I think if they just told that story without letting this wacky fucking world interfere with it,
my goodness, yeah, because like
been my favorite.
The like I will love you in any timeline kind of thing like is so good. But then when you start having to explain like, well, what is a sorcerer exactly? It's like, no, please, just you're so close.
It's the whole. It's like, yeah, like 8, and we'll get into this more in the next episode. But 8 suffers from like, they threw everything at the wall, and even if it didn't stick, they just put it in the game. And it interferes with like the actual good ideas that they had for it. Like, Squall and Renoa are like, their story is genuinely interesting to me because like it's a story about how their parents couldn't love each other. They didn't, like, they missed their opportunity, but they're the ones that came after did, and they fulfilled that. And I'm like, you can make an amazing fucking story about this. But I don't want to. Instead, we're talking about like, oh, there's actually spaceships in this game.
Oh, like
why?
The magic cast into the time stream by the sorcerer. Yeah.
Oh my god. Anyway, yeah. We'll move on to the next question.
Okay.
Oh, I'll do the next one.
Yeah.
Because I want the bonus to be the last one. All right. Tina Raisin Branford asks, which of these would you consider which of these games in the pixel era,
games.
Would you consider the best starting point for people interested in Final Fantasy? I actually think we answered this kind of already. 6 is like the best starting point.
Yeah, I feel like 6 is the most modern feeling game. You know, I think if you're interested in the history of Final Fantasy, you know, I think 4 does a good job of bridging the gap between like the modern cinematic storytelling of 6 and sort of the cruft of 1 through 3.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I think 6 is just, it's just so good at setting up like what is interesting about this story and this world and these characters immediately out the gate. And it's a pretty easy game to just jump into. So I think it's by far just the easiest one to sell to someone who wants to know like what the deal is with the pixel games. And like, I don't know if you saw the in Magic they made 4 commander decks and they're different games for each one.
Yeah.
And so they have 6, 7, 10, and 14. And I think it's really telling that like 6 is the one that's basically like the flagship for the pixel ones.
Yeah, and for good reason, even though it makes me a little cranky.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It does. I mean, I don't doubt at all that like there are people at MTG who are like diehard FF6 fans.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. I think probably 6 and then 4. Yeah, I would say like do the Super NES trilogy first, 4, 5, and 6, or 6, 4, and 5, and then go to 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm. And finally, our last question, Jorge.
Oh, this is a bonus question from, it says here, Ultros and Typhon themselves. What is the best Final Fantasy game to start with if you're intimidated by how different everyone's answer is to that question?
I saw that a lot. I've seen this a lot with all of the MGG crowd of people. Some of them are jumping in and like really loving it. Other people are like, I'm starting with 1 and this is great and I'm so proud. Some people are like, I tried 10 and I hate Blitzball and you were a coward.
Oh my
I'm sorry,
God.
it's not that bad. But yeah,
10? Really?
what, like starting with 10 or
like was 10 bad or something?
No, it's just people. Blitzball's a little bit clunky of a mini game, and people are getting real butt mad when they're not immediately good at Blitzball.
Yeah, what the 10 aside from Blitzball, 10 has to be one of the most accessible ones though. Okay, whatever.
Anyways, we can talk more about 10 later. But like, I don't if you're intimidated by Final Fantasy, I think starting with 14 is a terrible way to start. Because that's,
I mean, I guess some people can. That is their jam. I'm not gonna.
Well, I mean, I feel like if
poo-poo
that's playing an MMO. Like if that's your MMO,
yeah,
you're set.
If you like MMOs, then just play that.
All my whinging about 14, like it's still basically the best MMO out right now. And like if that's your game, like clearly it is people's favorite for a reason.
Might be true. Yeah.
You know, even if every other character is like a cat boy or a steampunk dude or a child.
I mean, I guess honestly, in this kind of answer, I feel like if people are intimidating you with different answers, then like you need to stop talking to those people and just ask yourself, is this for me?
Yeah. Well, and like I remember seeing someone I like looked up to too being like, you know, Final Fantasy in all its like magnitude is still like unapproachable. I'm like, no, it's not. You could pick literally any game and you'll be a guy on an ostrich fighting the state. Like, they're pretty much all just that.
I guess like the problem is like it depends on if we're talking about the whole picture, like the entire scope of games. There is something for everyone, and it is intimidating when people are like, you should play this one because it's the one I love, and you should think what I think and like what I like. And unless that person knows like what you're interested in, who you are, then yeah, you would recommend it to them.
Yeah, because it does feel like when you ask someone like where should I start, you'll get like 5 or 6 really good answers that are all just as valid and like completely contradictory to one another.
That's the issue. And this is something in general that I don't like with like, I guess I'm gonna say nerd spaces or like you know, this kind of niche subcultures, is that a lot of people do get a little too passionate about getting others into things, and they end up unwittingly doing the opposite, where it's like, well, now I don't care because like you're all too abrasive and you're not even listening to what I'm saying. When a person is asking like, well, which Final Fantasy should I play? Your response should be a question. It should be, okay, well, what kind of games do you like? What are you into already? Like, do you like more turn-based?
Yeah, what are your favorite movies? What are your favorite
what are your
anime?
yeah, stuff like that. What's your favorite movies? What are your favorite anime? What are you into?
Yeah, because
like, do you like character focus? Do you like story, world building? Do you like class, job systems?
Yeah, because
you have to ask questions.
One of the things I came up with in sort of like intriguing someone on these is like, play Final Fantasy VI if you want to play an opera. Play Final Fantasy VII if you want to play an anime. Play Final Fantasy IX if you want to play a storybook. Play Final Fantasy X if you want to play a 2000s music video. And, you know, like, there's no wrong answer, so you might as well just try and figure out like what sparks your interest the most. So
I guess that's what it is. I think that the correct answer is, it's like you should start with whichever one you immediately are drawn to, and then go from there. And here's the thing: if you don't like it, you turn it the fuck off, and you play another thing.
If I had to pick like one answer though, if you like had no idea anything on Final Fantasy, it's probably safe to just say 7, just so you can see what all the hullabaloo is about.
I mean, I got a remake, I would say.
You think remake?
Like, original. Yeah, because original 7 is to the PlayStation what FF4 was to the Super NES. Like it does feel like it is still picking up like pixel era sensibilities that didn't really translate well to 3D, but they still kept them.
I mean, those polygons are chunky, you know.
It's the least good looking one. I mean, and this is me being unbiased. If I turn my bias on, I think it's the best looking one. But I would say either start with remake. Honestly, 15 is not a bad starting point for people who are new.
People love those boys.
It's got the boys. If you're more character focused, start with 15. If you're more class focused, do 14 or 11. If you're more and if you're more like world building focused, I would say 14, 10. If like you said, you just like picturesque characters with like a lot of like fantastical, like even more fantasy than most of the entries, 9 I would say is a good pick. Like if you like a Ghibli movie, just play 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it just, I cannot give a straight. I will say 4. If you ask me, like point blank, I got like 1 second to answer. I would say start with 4, and I would say the DS remake. That's where I would push.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to like soft lock yourself, for lack of a better phrase. And 4, like you can just play 4. It's a story, and you can get through it, and it's not too long. Like there you go. You're good.
Yeah, 4 is surprisingly short. That's why the DS remake has like a multiple playthrough system, is because they needed to pad it out somehow. But it's still short. It's like 25 hours even if you do everything. But it's a sweet 25 hours. It's like condensed. It's perfect in that way.
Yeah, no, I think that answers that succinctly. Like, listen to your heart is the answer.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jorge, let's take a trip real quick to the rec room, where we recommend something inside and outside world of gaming. Jorge, do you have any recommendations?
I do. I have quite a few actually.
Oh.
I've been for research for this episode, we actually I actually watched Baron Munchausen, the movie by Terry Gilliam.
Yeah.
And I fucking loved it. I thought it was an amazing movie. I wish actually there was a RPG based on this. It's beautiful. It's a gorgeously shot movie. It's funny. Like it has like that British dark humor. Like the set design is honestly for the kind of project it is, it kind of goes hard. You really feel like you can't tell what's a special effect or not sometimes. I loved it, and actually I watched it because like I've seen people compare it a lot to Final Fantasy IV in terms of like story beats, and after watching it, I kind of had like a similar experience as I did watching The Postman, where it's like this is not at all what y'all think it is. In fact, like if you try to compare them too much, you end up diminishing both of them for their own merits. And for that reason, I recommend watching Baron Munchausen completely, independent of what Final Fantasy IV is. Even though people claim that it was one of the major inspirations of it, I wholeheartedly disagree. However, I do still think it's a wonderful time.
Yeah, I think the story is pulling from a lot of the same mythos, because I think that's what Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy as a series does at its best, is like it's kind of an all mythos. It's pulling from like biblical stuff, from like Gilgamesh, from like ancient Greek, and different gods and stuff. So
yeah, and even from like contemporary media,
yeah,
like
Star Wars and Laputa.
That's one comparison I'll agree with. Like yeah, there's a little bit of Star Wars in Final Fantasy. Yeah. But Baron Munchausen, there is not. It insofar as like the specific details of what makes these stories unique, no. In like the shared aspects of storytelling, sure. And then other than that, I also, well, actually, I'll let you go next.
Yeah, non gaming, I'd like to recommend The Rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
It just wrapped up. Are you familiar with The Rehearsal, Jorge?
No, tell me what it is.
So this is Nathan Fielder, who also did Nathan for You and The Curse.
Mm-hmm.
how do I describe the rehearsal to someone who's never seen the rehearsal? Um, Imagine, if you will, someone who is a bit awkward, a bit reserved, who maybe feels like they have the right answer through mimicking and studying other people, but just can't seem to get it right. And uh, Nathan has kind of an absurd budget from HBO to basically do whatever he wants to
Okay.
to help people come up with ways to simulate scenarios that would never be possible under normal circumstances. So season 2 wrapped
Okay.
up, but like one of the first episodes of season 1 is someone is recounting a problem they had going to a bar trivia night and having sort of a misunderstanding with someone, that a lie that they told that they've sort of been living for a number of years, and they're trying to spit it out. They didn't actually go to college. And Nathan basically builds a one-to-one near perfect reconstruction of the bar that they do trivia at. Hires actors that look like this person's friends, will like go on fake outings with this person in order to like seed him the answers to the bar trivia so that he can like ace it, so he can be like in a good mood and try to like perfectly craft the scenario in which like, yes, we have like set you up to succeed under these circumstances, and we've like accounted for all these variables, and now you have the ability to come to your friends, and why aren't you doing this thing? I set up all this for you, please. This is going so wrong. Oh my god, please stop. Oh my god. Is kind of the show. So season 2 is about him getting obsessed with like air traffic disasters and realizing that a lot of them happen because of a miscommunication between the co-pilot that maybe wants to speak up about something and the pilot that may not want to listen to that. And is about him like literally building like scale replicas of real airports, and like hiring both actors and actors to play flight attendant, or to play co-pilots, and co-pilots to play actors. And it's sort of just breaking this like, there are parts where you don't know what in the show is real and what's not. And that's kind of the point. It's like the artifice of the masks that we put on in order to perform things. And you know, what does that mean?
Cool.
So it says a lot of heady things, but then also it does some of the most like fucked up practical effects I've ever seen in my life. Like gross and bad and childish and stupid and smart and sophomoric and yeah, it's just everything. So
All right.
Jorge, do you have any video games to recommend?
Yes, I do, and it's actually quite an obvious pick for this episode.
Oh,
I've been playing Expedition 33 Clair Obscur. It is I will say that it took me a while to warm up to it. I didn't immediately believe the hype like everyone did. But I am at the point where I'm like, okay, you know what? This has the juice. This is the next big thing, and I love it. It takes bits and pieces from everything that I like and makes another game out of it without feeling like it's copying anything in particular. In fact, like, you know, just like Baron Munchausen, I think it's a disservice to compare it so much to old RPGs when really it's like elevating the style. It's doing new things, and it's even borrowing from games that aren't traditional turn-based RPGs, and still implements these things really well while telling a unique story. It doesn't, again, like the story doesn't feel like, even though some story beats do remind me of other games, it still doesn't feel like it's borrowing so much where I'm like rolling my eyes like, okay, we get it. It's warming. I'm warming up to it. Like I just got the last character, and I'm like, when they showed me that they could join me, I lost my mind. I'm like, 10 out of 10. This is it. I'm hooked. And it took me hours to get to that point, but it really does have something for everybody if you've ever in your life have been a fan of turn-based JRPGs.
Yeah. I actually finally sat down and like saw what the premise was. And I'm like, oh, this is a cool setting, and like the fact that it's pulling from a lot of very like French inspired like art and architecture is super cool. And like between that and Metaphor this past year, like as far as like actual fantastical fantasies, we're eating pretty good right now. Ironically, that's where Final Fantasy is kind of like lacking.
Kind of lacking right now. Actually, absolutely, I agree. And you know what's interesting? I'm glad you brought up Metaphor because like my wife is currently playing Metaphor, so I've been comparing the two just, on the side
Sure.
as a backseat gamer. And I honestly like Expedition 33 is doing what I wish Metaphor would do. Like, I'm not even joking. Because the issue I had with Metaphor is that it's a little too aesthetic driven. It's a little too like I'm just gonna say it. I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just how I feel. Like, it just feels like Persona with a different coat of paint, and they just changed the names, and it's a Persona 5 color swap to me. And it's just not enough to make it weird, but play exactly the same. You know what I mean? Like, so that's what drew me away from it. Whereas Expedition 33 does take like, it does make things weird. It still borrows from like paintings and stories that we already are familiar with, but it does do like its own thing. It is giving me like something to care about. And it's kind of what I wanted out of Metaphor. So I'm glad that a game did come out that scratched that itch for me. So I recommend it. Believe the hype. It is good.
I'm glad that game found you, and you got a lot out of it.
Yeah, and it's perfect for this episode because it is. I play the game and you can see where the Final Fantasy influences are, and it's not like obvious. It's only there if you're familiar with the games you played. So it is a love letter, in the best way.
That's fantastic. Well, I would like to recommend a very small, kind of in contrast to this, a very small game called Formless Star. It is an indie game by Splendid Land, I believe is what they go by.
Splendid Land.
And it's a very simple game. It's got sort of a Super Nintendo era RPG aesthetic, a pixel era, if you will. In which you play a race of aliens that is cataloging the different creatures in a strange planet. And every time you leave the spaceship, the landscape is different, and the creatures will be slightly different. So you've got to sort of explore and figure out the different biomes. And really, all it is a game where you like walk around a little environment and interact with some creatures, and then you learn a little bit of like lore bits about them, and they do a fun little animation, and that's 90% of the game. But it's, in the same sense that we talk about like the pixel era games being so driven by the people creating it, you really get a sense for like the artist's humor and their sensibilities, and it's just charming and kind of wonderful in a way that few games are. And it really has a moment where it's like, no, we're gonna stop and I'm gonna talk to you about, like, bluntly about what the thesis of this game is, through this character, and just what it means to make something that may or may not reach anybody.
You streamed this for me, and I got to watch it. And it is exactly as you say. I think the most charming thing about this game is that it feels like it was made by somebody, in an environment where I feel like too many games are just products for consumption, intentionally made to waste your time and money. It is incredibly refreshing to play something that is just like human made. I didn't pay a cent for it. It was just somebody wanted to tell me something through the medium of gaming.
Yeah, it's a pay what you want game, so really I threw them $5, but like,
okay, good.
Just
I actually thought it was free, but if it is pay what you want, then don't pay what you want, pay what you should. It is the kind of thing we should champion. It's a game by a person, and not a corporation.
And also, it's like it's 2 to 3 hours. Like, I literally played it after dinner one night, and that was it. So.
We did one session, and that was it. And you can get the secret ending even in one session.
Yeah.
So it's worth it.
Yeah. So play some games that remind you that art still exists in the world,
or to just make you feel good at the end of the day. Like, wow, I feel enriched. I feel like I learned something about myself. That's the kind of shit I like.
Well, this has been Brain Lords, the podcast known in Japan as Brain Lords USA Easy Type. You can find us on social media at Brain Lords Pod. You can find me on social media as Cute Monster Props or at my website, cutemonsterprops.com. Jorge, where can they find you?
I might be crying in the corner, but if I'm not, then I'll be J-Man Velez on all social medias. I don't use social media as much anymore, but there I am.
Well, questions, comments, and inquiries can go to brainlordspod@gmail.com, and you can find us on YouTube and all the other places where podcasts are born. Thanks for listening, and remember, consume less, engage more.
Go and rest our heroes.
Mm-hmm. Be prove the justice of our culture, or whatever that buck wild Ghostbusters.
Remember, the crystal continues to shine.
Ooh, that's okay.
There you go.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
On the next episode of Brainlords, Jorge can't seem to function with the junction system, while Kyle thinks that Hojo is a big no-no. The two must wrestle with the crushing despair of Nine's ending to protect VV at all costs. It's all on the next episode. What if each Final Fantasy was the final Final Fantasy Part 2, featuring a very special guest and, well, of course, some fan service.
Ronaldinho, success!